Coming up on Bloomberg this weekend. SpaceX jumps 19% after the biggest IPO ever.
I give SpaceX less than a 10% chance of succeeding at all.
This morning, new Bloomberg reporting on Elon Musk's race to go public now as he wakes up as the world's first trillionaire.
Washington and Tehran signaling an interim deal to end fighting in Iran is close.
Maybe as soon as this weekend or Monday, we will get on the other side of this. Energy prices will come back down.
But overnight, the U.S. shot down Iranian drones near the Strait of Hormuz. What it means for talks.
Team USA dominates its opening World Cup match.
This was the best game they've ever played on an international stage.
Winning 4-1 in the first World Cup game to be played in America in decades.
It's the biggest sporting event in the world, and it's on our home soil.
Welcome to Bloomberg This Weekend. We're coming to you live from Bloomberg's world headquarters in New York City. I'm David Gura.
I'm Christina Ruffini. We're here with Lisa Mateo. It is Saturday, June 13th. Welcome to all our listeners and viewers across all our Bloomberg platforms on radio, TV, streaming, Bloomberg.com, and the Bloomberg Business app.
A lot happening this morning. Two major stories over the course of the last few days. Of course, the debut of SpaceX on the NASDAQ.
Which you covered extensively yesterday.
I was there. I was living it, living every second.
I was taking photos like a proud mom and also very relieved I wasn't doing it live.
I look forward to seeing those or hope that they're being deleted. And then also the other news, of course, coming out of Washington, the president indicating that there's a memo of understanding very close to being complete, 80% of the way there. And Bloomberg reporting yesterday that this G7 meeting taking place on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday might be a good forum on the sidelines of which a deal could be signed.
Right, everybody's already in Europe. They've already burned the carbon. Maybe they could just pivot to somewhere nearby. But again, we're getting mixed messages from Tehran and from Washington already as to what is in potentially this MOU. So we'll have to see what happens.
Track that over the course of the weekend, of course. First, let's get the headlines with Lisa Mateo. Lisa.
You got it. And the U.S. says an interim peace deal that reopens the Strait of Hormuz and ends Iran's nuclear weapons ambitions. It could be signed within days. A senior administration official estimated an 80 or 85% chance that an accord gets signed soon. Axios is reporting President Donald Trump said he thinks a deal could be signed over the weekend or even Monday. Now, the senior official had said a deal could ensure that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapons program, but would let it maintain a civilian nuclear energy program, adding that it would also end both sides' blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. If all terms are met, the U.S. would ease sanctions on Iran. Now, it's not clear whether Tehran has agreed to the same terms. This all comes as the G7 world leaders prepare to meet in France next week. And SpaceX, now one of the world's most valuable companies, and turned its founder Elon Musk into the world's first trillionaire. The company's first day on the stock market also handed buyers of the $75 billion IPO a 19% return. The shares jumped as much as 31% above their $135 offering price before closing, up 19% at just over $160. That left the company's market cap at $2.2 trillion, surpassing Tesla. Well, both the debut of SpaceX and growing optimism around the U.S.-Iran interim peace deal, that pushed the markets higher in Friday trading. The S&P 500 extended this week's gain, and U.S. oil settled below $85 a barrel. Concerns over inflationary pressures, well, that eased, with traders now pushing their bets for a Federal Reserve interest rate hike into next year. Policymakers, they meet next week. And workers at the Kennedy Center, they were putting up scaffolding late into the night to begin removing President Trump's name from the building. The president's hand-picked board at the center lost a last-minute appeal to keep the name up. The board now says work has been delayed due to thunderstorms in the Washington, D.C. area. Yesterday, crowds gathered at the site asking to take the name down. Democratic Representative Joyce Beatty from Ohio said this is not over.
So it means a lot to have you and others coming out and standing here and writing letters and not letting them take us for granted, because this is bigger than this center. This is about all of us.
And a big day for the U.S. at the World Cup yesterday. The Americans dominated Paraguay in its opening match 4-1. The U.S. sent 3 goals into the net in the first half, adding the 4th goal in the final seconds of the game. The next time they play, David, Christina, is Friday. That's against Australia.
All right. I didn't stay up to watch. Had to save my waking hours for tonight when the Knicks will play the Spurs, but much excitement in Los Angeles. I did see the opening. Did you watch any of it?
No, but I do notice that Lisa's, I did notice Lisa's wearing Knicks colors, which I will say when you walked in, I thought, oh, Denver Broncos colors.
Oh,
but
my God.
Obviously.
We will take all the good luck that we can. All superstitions are welcome here on set. Right. Just recapping what Lisa said a moment ago, the salient points. Elon Musk, now the world's first trillionaire, SpaceX, hitting NASDAQ Friday after a long-awaited IPO, which was, as Lisa said, the largest in history.
That's right. By the closing bell, SpaceX's market cap hit $2.1 trillion, that's trillion with a T, dollars, making it one of the world's most valuable companies. With us now, we've got host of Bloomberg Tech, the one and only Ed Ludlow. Ed, thanks for getting up early.
He did watch the game, I just want to note. He did watch the entirety of the game.
Do you ever sleep?
No.
Rarely.
I mean, you have been on this all week. You have been on TV on this, on radio, on all the platforms. When we played our headlines earlier, you heard Elon Musk say he gave this a 10% shot of actually succeeding with all these goals.
Yeah.
So explain to me what just happened. Then why are all these people buying into this huge valuation? This stock is massively oversubscribed. Why does the market have such confidence in this company and this man?
It's a referendum on Elon Musk, essentially. You know, that everything that SpaceX presented to the market, it's pitched for the future, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I've said this to David so many times, but it's just the easiest way for everyone that's watching and listening to understand. When you file to go public, you file an S1. It's a document, it's called a prospectus. And you basically say to investors, here are all of our ideas and plans, and here are all the risks involved. And it just reads like a Christopher Nolan sci-fi script.
And like, aren't the first couple of pages a bunch of like pictures of like rocket ships?
Yeah, and you know, there's an element that SpaceX, we can get into some of the ways, but they just don't do things the normal way. Elon Musk doesn't conform to Wall Street norms, but you know, the point is that SpaceX, in going public, needed to raise money. They need money to fund a bit of a pivot in the business, which is they're going from launching satellites for customers in the private sector and the government, and a Starlink satellite constellation themselves. You basically can get very good Wi-Fi that instead of coming from terrestrial cables and beamed to you via a box, comes from a satellite. Great business, working really well. Their future looks so different. You know, it is basically part one, put data centers in space, data centers in the form of a satellite, become an AI company, sell AI software like OpenAI and Anthropic do, and still the original goal of getting humans to Mars. It's all in there. And it's all sort of economically explained, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
David, you and I have tried to get into
They do emphasize in the prospectus this is a new economy. This is a
Yes.
radical departure for the existing economy that we
Yeah.
have. Let me flag the great big take story that you and many of your colleagues have written about, the road to this IPO.
Yeah.
I think it's so fascinating. And you talk about the urgency that Elon Musk felt and conveyed to his team. And that had to do with getting out there before the midterm elections, which I find fascinating, getting out there before Anthropic and OpenAI, and then also doing this before his 55th birthday, Elon Musk's 55th birthday. A small roll of the eyes there for our radio audience. But explain how he was able to do this so quickly. It wasn't long ago that he said, we don't need public markets. We can continue to rely on the private markets.
Like originally, the story around SpaceX was that they would spin off Starlink, that business, like the internet business that I told you about. And Musk had said for a really long time that he would only do that when their numbers were good, when they had strong revenues and good cash flow. And so when we got to the end of last year and the stories started coming out that they would go public, it was a bit of a surprise that it would be the whole company.
Yeah.
But we quickly reported, and Bloomberg broke the story on this. The whole point was to raise money, buy GPUs, chips for running AI models.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
And put them in space, right? And that is, that's a big part of the story. And all of those factors that you explained, based on very detailed reporting, are true. Musk and the CFO of this company, Brett Johnson, had so much control over the process that's normally run by the bankers. They did something unusual, which is just a technical thing, but before they even started marketing the IPO and went on the road and tried to convince investors of the brilliant story in the prospectus, Elon Musk and Brett Johnson basically were like, let's set a price, $135 a share. Typically, you don't do that. You say, okay, here's a price range, and you kind of say, what do you guys think? Mm-hmm. Should we go up a little bit, down a little bit? And our understanding and our reporting is that it was Musk that really made that decision, in part to take everyone's leverage away, to control the IPO and do it on his terms, which is very Muskian.
Very Elon Musk,
even if
yes.
the mechanism of the IPO was unusual.
All right, so it closed up 19% higher on the first day of trading.
Yeah.
It's now at $161 per share. But as we talked about, this stock was 4 times oversubscribed.
Yeah.
So, like, how does that work? Is this if you're in line to invest in, space stations on Mars, stay in line? Like, how are you getting this, and how do they prioritize?
So everything is relative. It was 4 times, maybe almost 5 times oversubscribed. In IPOs around the world, not just in the United States, there have been IPOs that are way more oversubscribed than that. But I would measure the demand on a dollar basis. So they sold $75 billion worth of stock. There was $350 billion of demand across retail investors and big institutional investors. It means everyone is disappointed, right? Everyone that tried to get, so like, some of your audience will probably be saying, yeah, that was me. They'll be listening and going, God, I really regret that I couldn't get the shares at 135. Maybe they used a platform like Robinhood or their online brokerage, and they applied for 1,000 and they got 100. Or in most cases, they applied for a few dozen and got 1 or 7 or whatever it is. So then, when trading started yesterday, you have a choice. Do you try and buy shares on the open market? It's better to have the shares at 135, and then if they go up, that's great. Then buy them at a higher price, and then they fall. That's not good.
Before we let you go, last night, celebration at the JP Morgan building, just a stone's throw from where we are sitting today. Jamie Dimon bringing out the tomahawk steaks for everyone to enjoy as a result of all of this. Wall Street's happy, but I look at this nugget in, I think, Bailey Lipschultz's recent piece. SpaceX is not going to pay any fee if underwriters of the offering agree to exercise their ability to sell another 15% of shares. Use this green shoe.
Yeah.
Why would they agree to such a thing? Why, given the magnitude of this, have banks kind of not rolled over, but done so much to lessen the amount of pay that they'd be getting as a result of this deal?
The banks are going to phone me now and the bankers because of my answer. But go back to what we were saying about Elon Musk and the CFO setting the price and dictating the terms. The bankers got paid. It's not entirely clear to me what it was they were doing. Actually, there's a lot of evidence that Goldman Sachs in particular did a very good job of placing the stock with, the whole point is when you decide who to allocate the shares to, you want to go to an institutional investor that will hold on to them for a long period of time. It's actually why there were so many retail shares allocated, because the company. And
there are penalties you can get from the penalty box if you flip them too quickly. Depending on it's actually, I'm just going to say I don't know the answer to that, but basically there's a distinction of buying stock on the open market, being allocated in the IPO, and whether you're an employee. The main point is that the banks made a lot of money from this. Musk did also negotiate very low fees in general. Because the scale of it, is just so unprecedented. On the green shoe thing, everyone on the trading floor at the Nasdaq was wearing green shoes, which Musk signed off on. So there we go.
There we go. Ed Ludlow,
the
anchor of Bloomberg Tech, joining us here in New York as he makes his way back to San Francisco to start the show there on Monday of next week. We'll surely track this as it goes along. Ed, thank you very much.
All right, we're seeing a headline crossing the terminal here, and that is Pakistan's prime minister expects a finalization of the U.S.-Iran deal within 24 hours. So we've been talking about market reaction to SpaceX, but markets also rallied yesterday, and oil prices fell around rumors of a new round of talks that the U.S. and Iran could be nearing an interim ceasefire deal. Now, this comes as overnight the U.S. shot down Iranian drones over the strait, and on Friday, Vice President J.D. Vance tried to shoot down what he called fake information about what could be in the deal. Writing on X, the president is going to get us a good outcome one way or the other.
Bloomberg News Deputy Washington Bureau Chief Laura Davison joins us now. And Laura, let me begin with that headline, which, as Christina mentioned, just crossed the terminal here. Have you comment on that directly? Or if you want to go more general here, we are still looking at back and forth between these two sides. Some indication that there could be something signed on the sidelines of this G7 meeting, but still a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty surrounding all of this.
Yeah, this most recent statement from Pakistan's prime minister that he expects that there will be a deal signed within the next 24 hours that will be followed by technical talks adds an additional degree of certainty to what has been a very, very uncertain situation over the past 24, 36 hours. Iran has signaled that they are open to a deal and that something may be coming together A senior administration official had a briefing call with reporters yesterday to prep the press for this potential deal, saying that it was possible that 80 to 85% that something could come together over the next couple of days, whether that be on Sunday or into next week. I want to note that what the actual contours of this deal and what could be signed is still quite uncertain. Iran has talked about the parts of a deal that they're interested in, things like having their assets unfrozen or sanctions relief, while the U.S. has been focusing on reopening the Strait of Hormuz and Iran agreeing to end their nuclear program. We have not seen yet some sort of comprehensive document that both sides have signaled that they are on board with, either in draft form or final form.
Laura, there's also something I thought was very telling in the other part of that Vance tweet, in that he said the Iranians aren't receiving cash and no funds are being released for simply signing a deal or attending a meeting, which kind of implies funds will be released for other things at some point. Do we know what is happening, whether the administration has signaled what of those Iranian assets they're willing to unfreeze? And then will this potential deal, MOU, temporary deal, whatever we're calling it, there's been a sequencing issue this whole time. Do we think this is going to address in any way the nuclear program, or is that something that is fully going to be put on pause until the next round of negotiations?
So a couple pieces there. One, the way that the U.S. is talking about this deal is that there's sort of this graduated approach that if Iran takes a step, then there'll be some sort of carrots, some sort of reward for them coming after that. But what that actual sequencing looks like and what will be agreed in this first phase could be very, very light. We've heard from U.S. officials as well as from kind of outside commentators that this is essentially sort of an opening bid to talks, and then all of the nitty-gritty details will be figured out after that. The U.S. has even talked about sort of a 60-day period for reopening the Strait of Hormuz, and that Iran could see some sanctions relief, bit by bit, or some cash assets unfrozen bit by bit during that period. But this is all very, very tenuous, and kind of everything is in the eye of the beholder right now. What the U.S. is talking about and seeing, and what Iran is seeing, are really two different things.
Laura, I'm going to read from that tweet from Shahbaz Sharif. I think it's interesting. A number of points in it are interesting. So I'll read from the top. We're closer to a peace deal than ever before, with finalization likely expected in the next 24 hours. Pakistan is preparing for the electronic signing of the peace deal immediately after, followed by technical level talks next week. A bunch of thank yous follow that. But I'm stuck on this part about electronic signing. And Bloomberg has done such great reporting over the course of the week of the challenges of these negotiations. So the shorthand that we're using here is there have been talks between the U.S. and Iran. In fact, they haven't been happening directly. There's been a lot of currying of information via this Pakistani intermediary. This takes days to kind of make progress on points of this memo of understanding. Talk a bit about that. And again, what our expectations are. Bloomberg yesterday breaking this news that maybe there could be a signing on the sidelines of the G7. Just what that might look like, how that might unfold, and then if you have anything to add about the kind of notion that this might just be signed electronically, there wouldn't be the kind of pomp and circumstance that perhaps we're expecting.
Yeah, that was the discussion yesterday, was having some sort of big in-person signing that would be in Geneva, just a short way away from the G7 in France, that potentially some U.S. officials like Steve Witkoff, J.D. Vance would go. It was a little less clear who from the Iranian side would be present for that. This certainly, wouldn't necessarily be a leader-to-leader, with Trump being there. But having this now, being downgraded essentially to some sort of virtual signing or electronic signing suggests that maybe a deal is not quite as firm, or that the two sides are not as confident in this deal, that they don't want to have that photo op moment. Thinking back to when Trump established the Board of Peace and assigned and signed this big deal with Gaza, about a year ago, he had the big display, the backdrop, all the world leaders there. This is not shaping up to be that.
The other interesting part about this is you have Mehr News Agency, which is another one of those semi-official Iranian state-run news agencies. They leaked what they're saying is a purported draft. There was pushback from that from Washington. But one of the things that was in it, it talked about that Iran will still control the strait in a way that was very unspecified, but was different than what it had been before. Is that a big concern, and could that be one of the major sticking points here? Is that going to get resolved in this? I mean, I would imagine it has to be the thing that gets resolved in this, even if they push the nuclear program to the next round of talks.
This is one of the things that really exemplifies sort of the difference of how the U.S. and Iran are reading, sort of the same words on the page. If reopening the Strait of Hormuz to Trump and to the U.S. means that it is, open, free flow of traffic, that the Iranian and U.S. blockade stops, and that, commerce essentially can resume to what it was before February 28th. Iran has said, no, we still want some sort of degree of control of the traffic moving through there, whether that be a toll system, whether that be just some sort of oversight on the ships that are getting to go in and go out. This is, Iran's key leverage that they were able to gain during this war, of realizing they were able to have a lot of control over the Strait of Hormuz, and they're not ready to give that up. So this is going to be sort of perhaps the first test as this deal is being worked out of, are they able to actually come to some sort of agreement, not just in principle on the piece of paper, but also in practice in the days and weeks following whatever signing may or may not come in the next couple days.
Laura, our colleague Dan Williams is going to join us a little later in the show from Israel to talk about this conflict from the region. But I do want to ask you just about the relationship between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu and the role that he's playing in these talks. We learned that they're not a party to whatever this deal is going to be when it's signed. How significant is that? We know that his inclination or his hope would be that these strikes would continue in some way. He's not as keen to kind of end the fighting with Iran as the U.S. might be, it seems.
This really has the potential to upset the whole deal. We have seen throughout the process, throughout the past 3 months or so, that as Trump and Iran perhaps were getting closer to a deal, Netanyahu and some of the strikes with Israel would flare up in Lebanon, derailing part of the process. While these are technically two separate conflicts, they're really, really interwoven, and we've seen the tensions between Netanyahu and Trump really flare up as Trump wants Netanyahu to stop the bombing, stop the fighting in service of this broader agreement. Netanyahu has not agreed to that and is not part of this deal or signing that could happen in the next 24 hours or so. And that really remains sort of a wild card out there that could potentially upend everything in sort of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of approach.
And as usual, nothing is agreed to until everything is agreed to.
Electronically or otherwise.
Exactly.
Yes.
All right, Laura Davidson, our Deputy Washington Bureau Chief, joining us from D.C. Thank you so much. And now we're going to go to Lisa Mateo with the headlines.
You got it. And President Donald Trump says the U.S. military has killed who he called the leader of the Tren de Aragua gang with help from Venezuela. Now, in a post on social media, the president said a swift and lethal kinetic U.S. strike killed Hector Rutsford Guerrero Flores. Tren de Aragua has been labeled by the U.S. as a terrorist organization. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, he posted on X that the strike took place earlier in the week on the group's compound in Venezuela. Now, according to U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton, the gang is responsible for countless acts of violence, extortion, and drug trafficking in North America, South America, and Europe. In company news, after 8 months of review, Paramount's $110 billion purchase of Warner Brothers Discovery has been cleared by the Justice Department. In a statement, the agency said the deal is not likely to hurt consumers or competition in the film and television industry. But not everyone agrees. Democrats in Washington and many in Hollywood, they argue that the tie-up, it will result in fewer jobs, higher production costs, and less choice for audiences. And Roku could be up for sale. Sources tell Bloomberg the streaming video platform has been in talks with at least one U.S. media company about a potential combination. Roku shares they rose as much as 24% on Friday, giving the company a market value of more than $21 billion. David and Christina.
I still have a Roku.
I do too. Yes.
You?
I think mine's in a drawer, but I do have one. It works.
It was novel for a time. Lisa, thank you very much.
Thanks, Lisa.
As of Friday, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, is reporting more than 2,000 confirmed cases of measles in the U.S. this year so far. That's already almost equal to the total number of cases confirmed by the agency in all of 2025.
That's right. At the same time, health experts are battling an Ebola outbreak in Central Africa and the screwworm infiltration in Texas, just as visitors from all over the world converge across North America for the World Cup. We're joined now by Dr. Amesh Adalja. He's senior scholar at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security and an adjunct assistant professor at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Doc, thank you for joining us. I mean, you've said, quote, you have to think of the World Cup as a mass gathering event. It's going to be diseases of crowds, or what we call crowd diseases that spread. Okay, we've got Ebola, we've got screwworm, and now possibly an uptick in measles. What are you most worried about?
Of those three, it's measles that is actually a crowd disease. So it's going to be viruses like measles, COVID, RSV, influenza, norovirus, and then sexually transmitted infections, including Mpox. That's likely what we'll see an uptick of, not Ebola, not screwworm. This is going to be where people are interacting, so things have to be able to spread efficiently. And when it comes to Ebola, yes, it's deadly and scary, but it doesn't spread very efficiently from person to person.
Dr. Adalja, as we watch the news break from Africa about the spread of Ebola, this new strain in particular, there is this effort underway to develop a vaccine quickly to combat it. It makes me wonder about measles and why there isn't a treatment like that for measles yet. What explains that, and sort of where is the science on finding something that could be curative for measles?
So measles is something that is an acute infectious disease, that it has an incubation period. You get sick and then most people will recover, although 1 in 5 may end up hospitalized. People may end up with pneumonia, and there are severe complications and deaths that occur. We just don't have something, an antiviral, that works very quickly in that early stage. There is work being done, but it hadn't really been something that we had to think about because we have a safe and effective vaccine that has been around for almost like 70 years, and that's really decrease the burden of measles in most places. And it's been the vaccine that's been seen as the solution. But now, as the anti-vaccine movement has made major inroads and people are turning away from the vaccine, now there is renewed interest in thinking about antiviral therapies to prevent the severe complications of measles. But the thing is, you're going to have to get that to people very quickly. And we don't have a rapid diagnostic test for measles. So it's going to be a logistical challenge, even if we get an antiviral for measles. The vaccine remains the best way to control measles, though.
I do want to dig into these measles numbers a little bit, because as I was reading up on this, I didn't realize that the U.S. is about to lose its status under the World Health Organization as a measles-free destination. It's been declared measles-free twice already, and it has to essentially prove its case. The U.S. asked for more time. It was supposed to be about now. They're going to do it in November. But according to the study in the Lancet, the number of cases and the genetics of them far exceed the usual threshold for being able to declare yourself a measles-free destination. Do you think this is kind of a fait accompli and the U.S. is going to lose this status in the fall?
Yes, it would have been removed earlier if they wouldn't have moved this until after the election. But yes, I think that measles elimination status is gone in the United States. And if you look at any of the benchmarks of a measles eliminated country, the U.S. is not meeting any of them. And irrespective of that, we can't control measles. We have over 2,000 cases in the United States. We've had deaths last year from measles. This is not something that the U.S. has the wherewithal to control anymore because people have turned away from the actual solution, the vaccine. So yes, I think this is an embarrassment that we will lose elimination status. And I think that it really is going to take a lot of hard work to regain that measles elimination status.
What do we know from an epidemiological perspective of how the U.S. government, I guess the Canadian government, the Mexican government is thinking about spread of measles, other illnesses at the World Cup? Is it something that you think there's been enough attention paid to?
Do they have contact tracing teams at these events?
How much is that something that's part and parcel with a major event like this one?
It's definitely been something incorporated very early on, where the host cities were looking at their public health preparedness, their hospital preparedness, thinking about what early warning systems they need to have in place, how they might deal with healthcare surge from infectious disease and from other events. There are places doing very innovative stuff by looking at genomic data, like from wastewater monitoring, to see which viruses are high in the wastewater in a given place. There are people looking at social media posts to see are people getting sick, and they're integrating all of that together. So each city is doing it a little bit differently. There's some interesting work being done in Toronto. There's been interesting work done at Georgetown that's monitoring multiple cities. So there is a lot of innovation going on, trying to integrate kind of that whole radar that we have around these. And some cities are going to be more prepared than others, but I think when you have mass gathering events occurring, this is kind of how you do it. You have to expect that you're going to see upticks of crowd diseases and other healthcare needs, and you have to prepare proactively or you really won't be prepared.
I also want to ask, it does seem like measles is the bigger concern for World Cup, but I want to ask you about the status of this screwworm outbreak in cattle. You've got 9 cases currently reported. The FDA has issued an emergency authorization for screwworm treatment for dogs and cats. Is that likely to spread through, our family pets? And how do you stop this spread? Is it difficult?
It is difficult because the screwworm is basically the larva of a fly, the screwworm fly. And yes, it can infect domestic pets. That's not the main thing we worry about, though. It's mostly domestic cattle because that has major implications for the economy of the beef trade. And we've already seen Canada ban imports from Texas cattle. The way that you control this is really by reducing that fly population. And that involves releasing sterile flies. These are flies that have been genetically modified. They've been irradiated. They're sterile. They go out there and they mate, and the larva, or they're not able to have viable offspring, and the population goes down. That's the tried and true way of controlling screwworm. But it is very difficult to do, and it's going to take some time. And that number, the number of cases, 9, it's probably bigger than that, because some of those animals are hundreds of miles apart. So you have to really assume that it's in a wider swath of Texas, and it's going to take some time to actually get countermeasures in place.
I want to ask you lastly just about Ebola, I suppose the hantavirus as well. These are, I guess you could say, test cases for if there were an outbreak of a different virus or illness that spread more widely or could spread more quickly over a wider swath of territory. We've spoken with Tom Frieden, the former CDC director. We've spoken with Jeremy Conondike about Ebola and his work in Africa during the 2014-2015 outbreak there. How do you gauge the capacity of the U.S. and international health organizations to respond to outbreaks more generally based on what we've seen with the hantavirus and with this latest strain of Ebola?
I don't think it's very good. What you want is a proactive response where you're getting in at the earliest possible juncture with flooding the zone with lots of resources to be able to extinguish these things early. So with hantavirus, that was a little bit of a curveball because we had not seen that on a ship before. It was a version that spreads person to person. But what you saw was the CDC being very late to the game. Then you saw kind of conflicting policies relating to the quarantine in Nebraska and home monitoring and how that was all going to work. With Ebola, this virus had a several week to maybe months head start. Initial diagnostic tests didn't pick up this species of Ebola. And what you've also seen is really mixed policy from the U.S. Are they going to make a hospital in Kenya to take care of Americans? Why aren't we using our Ebola treatment units in the United States? All of that doesn't portend for good pandemic coordination if there were something more contagious. We don't have a CDC director. CDC has basically been decimated, a shadow of what it once was. So all of this does play on our resiliency to infectious disease threats. And if this was a stress test, the U.S. didn't really pass that stress test very well.
All right, Dr. Adalja, we're going to have to leave it there. But please keep an eye on things, and we'll have you back, and you can let us know how we're doing a couple weeks into everything.
The World Cup continues. I mean, this is a long event as well, and he brings up what's happening in Kenya. I think we've seen the third death related to the construction or potential construction of that quarantine facility there in Kenya. So certainly these are roiling issues in Africa for sure.
And all of them probably underreported, as he was talking about, likely screwworm as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We'll continue to track it. The return of Elliott Hill to lead Nike was supposed to reinvigorate that brand. Instead, setbacks in running, product development, and brand strategy have kept the swoosh from regaining its stride. Bloomberg Originals looks at why and where Nike is still struggling.
For decades, Nike had the simplest advice in sports: just do it. But the company that turned confidence into a slogan is now stuck explaining why its comeback is taking so long.
Nike hired this new CEO, Elliott Hill, who had been an executive at Nike for decades, and he was completely beloved by employees. But even under Hill, who has had so much expertise with the company, Nike is still really struggling. Before Elliott Hill took over Nike, Nike was being run by John Donahoe. Nike prioritized its direct-to-consumer channels. So it pulled out of a lot of those retailers. It really strained some of those relationships. Shelf space opened up in those retailers, and newcomers like On and Hoka filled those shelf spaces and really took over some of that running market share. Under Hill, Nike has really focused on regaining its dominance in sports, rebuilt relationships with a lot of the retailers. The running business has seen growth again. Nike is getting back on track in North America, but other parts of the business are still really struggling. Nike's China business continues to show decline. Its Converse business has reached a decade low.
With arguably the world's biggest sporting event on the horizon, Nike will have another chance to prove itself, though its first attempts have been wide of the goal.
Nike released their World Cup jerseys. People started to notice that these jerseys had a major flaw. The shoulder of the jersey kind of puckered up, both on players and with fans. June is going to be a huge month for Nike. The World Cup begins in North America, and the company shares its next quarter results.
Fascinating. I know this is a hugely fought war between Adidas and Nike in the context of the
It's so
World
funny.
Cup.
Because as a millennial, when I was in middle school, like the jacket everyone wanted was the Adidas one, right? With the three stripes. Like it was the Adidas era, and then it's shifted to the Nike era, and I feel like it's just a battle. But there's so many new brands now. Like every market that we're dealing with, it's more fractured. I think it's harder to dominate.
And interesting to see what happens here with Nike going forward. But the influx of Hoka, these other running companies, I think, having a huge effect on them.
What do you wear?
As well. I wear Brooks shoes.
I do too.
Yeah,
I do too, actually.
Reliable.
Well,
Feel reliable.
We're Brooks Anchor Desk. All right, speaking of successful companies, we're going to talk about Elon Musk some more. He, of course, is the world's first trillionaire. But how does this unimaginable wealth compare to other historic and business titans? That's coming up next on Bloomberg This Weekend. Stick with us. Welcome back to Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm Christina Ruffini here with David Gura. All right, so how much is $1 trillion? Well, according to the UK-based charity Oxfam, if Elon Musk spent $1 million every day, it would take him 2,700 years to spend it all. Bloomberg has put together some other ways to measure Musk's wealth. David Gura, just how rich is $1 trillion?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was thinking of this children's book I had when I was a kid called How Much is a Million? And I still have it, but it's so out of date. Like we all know what $1 million is. That's easy to quantify. But the way the book does it is by kind of stacking up numbers to space. Like it's a crazy thing to think about. Now we have...
Because that used to be a big number for wealth.
We've got billionaires, now we got trillionaires. So yes, Bloomberg has done this. I find this fascinating. We're going to kind of look at this in the context of enterprises and things that Elon Musk is interested in. The first is just making cars. Of course, his first big business is Tesla. He's expanded widely beyond that. If you put together every car maker in the US, Europe, and Japan, you see Mazda, Fiat, Mercedes, Ford, the total would be $900 billion, so $100 billion less than $1 trillion, so less than his aggregate wealth at this point in time. Elon Musk, also interested in space, of course. SpaceX has as part of its conglomerate business, sending rockets into space. He could fund NASA's budget 41 times over. Each of these small astronauts symbolic of NASA's budget, 41 times over. It's $200 billion more than NASA. One of SpaceX's key customers, of course, is NASA. He could cover that budget 41 times. Just an extraordinary thing to think about. The last thing that I wanted to look at is him compared to other magnates, or one magnate in particular. That's Warren Buffett.
This graphic is a choice.
Of course, the guy who started Berkshire Hathaway as we know it today. There's Elon Musk on the right. We have a trench-coated Warren Buffett with 7 Warren Buffetts within it. So he would be worth, in told, 7 Warren Buffetts. The thing I want to point out
here...
So
what you're saying to me is Elon Musk is 7 Warren Buffetts in a trench coat.
I'm sorry the radio audience can't see this illustration because it is amazing to see all of these cartoonish heads of Warren Buffett. What I will say, though, is Warren Buffett has given away a lot of his fortune to philanthropic causes, and that is something that Elon Musk has not done as of yet. He's kept a lot of the wealth that he's accumulated. Last thing I want to put up here, not in cartoon form, but a post on X from Senator Elizabeth Warren, commenting on what happened yesterday, the SpaceX trading on the NASDAQ. She writes, the typical American household would have to work more than 11 million years to make Elon Musk's level of wealth. Still an impossibility. I'm sure that Elon Musk's friends, perhaps he's working on extending our life to 11 million years, hasn't succeeded there yet. At the end here, Christina, she calls for a wealth tax. But there, I hope, some perspective on the amount of money, at least on paper, that Elon Musk has accumulated.
So when we were talking in the newsroom, we were thinking about this and how Elon Musk's wealth kind of measures up to people in history. I mean, John Jacob Astor, who was the first American multimillionaire, was estimated to be worth around $30 million at his peak, which when he died in 1848 was about 1% of US GDP. Wow. Musk, by contrast, is worth about 3% of the current US GDP. So to talk to us about the Gilded Age baddies and how they're comparing to Space Age Musk is Gautam Makhanda. He's author and executive fellow, at the Yale School of Management. All right, break it down. It's very hard to compare Musk to kings and queens and heads of state because they had things at their disposal and hard currencies that he kind of doesn't. But is this kind of private citizen wealth unprecedented in the modern written history of the world?
It's not completely unprecedented. John D. Rockefeller probably controlled roughly the same size of U.S. GDP, and sort of in terms of his wealth compared to the scale of the country. The estimates vary, but 2.5% to 3%. So he was somewhere between a little bit below Musk and a little bit above.
The coin of the realm here is power, as you point out in your piece. That's what you can get if you have a lot of money, and we've seen Elon Musk exercise that before he became a trillionaire. He bought Twitter, now X. He kind of controls the way that we talk and communicate with one another, at least some of us. He spent an awful lot of money on the last election. He intends to do so on the next election. Talk a bit about the way in which a person of his means, and again, it's a singular thing right now, somebody who has the amount of money that he has can wield influence, not just on building libraries, civic life, artistic life in this country, but can really kind of change the way that power is controlled in a country like the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, and the scale of that it's kind of hard to process. I mean, the way I was thinking about it last night is Sergey Brin is the second wealthiest person in the world, and you and I are much, much, much closer to Sergey Brin than Sergey Brin is to Elon Musk.
Cheers me, got him to hear that.
I think that makes me feel worse. I don't like that. Wow.
And Musk himself, right? So, sort of in the Andrew Carnegie tradition for the United States, people of this kind of wealth, like, were sort of expected to give lots to charity. So you said libraries, universities, things like that. Musk doesn't do that, right? Musk's total charitable giving looks like something well under 0.1% of his total net worth. So what you're seeing is what you can buy with power is, one way to put it is, the most expensive Senate race in history was Sherrod Brown versus Bernie Moreno in Ohio. And the two campaigns combined spent about $110, $115 million together. Not any one campaign, but together. That's what the two campaigns spent. Elon Musk spent $250 million in that campaign race. So by himself, he could swamp any US senator. But the way I would put it is, if you look at the day-to-day fluctuations in his wealth, right? Just the random motions of the stock market. So what he could spend in a political what he spent in that political campaign would be like 1% of the day-to-day fluctuations in his wealth. So he can swamp any senator, any congressman, probably any presidential candidate about as casually as you or I would buy a soda.
Think about that.
Again, this segment is not making me feel better. I'm very glad to see you, but you're not cheering me up on a Saturday. This piece that you have coming out, you use two very different historical examples. One is in Rome with the guy who bankrolled Julius Caesar, and the other is at the turn of the 20th century when Teddy Roosevelt broke up J.P. Morgan's wealth. Can you talk us through those two scenarios and kind of how they played out?
Yeah, Crassus was the wealthiest person in the sort of end of the Roman Republic. He bankrolled Caesar. What he basically did was use his enormous wealth to, well, they preserved the forms of the Republic, so the Senate still existed, right? All of these rules were there. In practice, Crassus and his wealth and other sort of Roman oligarchs combined to bypass all those things and rule the Republic directly. And that led quite directly to the fall of the Republic and what became the Roman Empire. Crassus used to say that you're not really wealthy unless you can afford to pay for a private army. That's what the definition of real wealth. And by that standard, the United States has a lot of people with real wealth. Republics have dealt with this problem through all of history, and this is maybe the most important way in which a republic falls, that because republics are very good at generating private wealth, and then people with private wealth say, well, there are only so many yachts I can buy. There are only so many, in the modern context, private jets I can buy. But power is something that I can buy that has no rivals, right? But when I have power, then I'm above the law, then I'm above everything else. But the United States has dealt with this issue before. And so Theodore Roosevelt and J.P. Morgan, when Roosevelt began to investigate J.P. Morgan's trusts and his sort of control of the U.S. economy, and while Morgan himself was not that rich, his financial network was such that he really did have a level of control over the U.S. economy that probably no individual today approaches. Morgan said to Roosevelt, if you have a problem with what I am doing, have your man meet my man.
And tell us what we're doing wrong. Yeah.
Themselves, right? And by your man, he meant the attorney general. So J.P. Morgan, as Theodore Roosevelt himself said that J.P. Morgan could not see Theodore Roosevelt as anything other but a rival operator of another big firm.
I want to ask, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. No, it says that Theodore Roosevelt, but the biggest single thing I would say that Theodore Roosevelt did is he said, that is not how this is going to work. The president of the United States is not first among equals. He is the representative of the people, and in the United States, the people rule.
Certainly different now from then, the kind of pushback that one was getting from
the public sentiment to do an action like that. Yeah.
Gautam Mukunda, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to see you. Columnist for Bloomberg Opinion, joining us here on this Saturday morning. Really appreciate the time. Just fascinating. And going back to these levels of comparison, I think that relativism is so important. We did a little bit here on the screen, but like, I think it is still a very hard thing for people to get their heads around.
It really, because it's so exponentially larger. Yes. It's really hard. Even digging into those numbers, I don't feel like I have a good grasp on exactly how much money that is. I do wonder about the impetus, especially in the U.S. right now, to take action like that. I'm not sure voters would even support it. I'm not sure. I mean, Roosevelt only kept that by one Supreme Court vote. I don't know what would happen if something like that happened now. All right, when we come back, BTW. Lisa's back with some of this week's most read stories.
I'm excited that you said BTW. And you can explore live streaming news and interviews, all our Bloomberg TV shows, documentaries, reporter analysis, and more. You can find that in one place. Check it out at Bloomberg.com/videos. Stay with us. It's Bloomberg This Weekend.
I think. Welcome back to Bloomberg This Weekend, or BTW. I'm Christina Ruffini with David Gura. I know.
It only took 100.
I'm giving you this one. I'm giving you this one. Next week, I'm taking it back. BT Dubs. Lisa Mateo's here with stories you might have missed. What have you got?
All right, we all know the rent is high in New York City, right?
The rent is too
high. How high is it, Lisa? Let's tell you.
How high is it?
The rent is so high, New Yorkers are living with nuns.
They are.
Yes, this is from the Wall Street Journal, okay? We're talking about a lot of, young women, some men too. They're turning to
feels
covenants.
Very old school.
Covenants, yes. I mean, it's the median asking rent is now, what, $3,600 in the first quarter of this year for rent in New York? So this is a cheaper option. $800 to about $1,600 a month. Okay, no year-long leases as well.
Do I have to become a nun?
Nope.
No, you do not, and you don't have to have a religious affiliation at all as well. So those are some of the perks of it. Okay, you get dinner every night too as part of it. Yes, there are the rules though, David.
Tell me about the rules.
11 p.m. curfew. Okay. No male visitors can come in to your room.
Why are you looking at me when you say that?
Some are bailing alcohol. No alcohol in the room. Some are doing that. Random room checks, possibly. You also have to pitch in, for cleaning duties. You help out.
That seems fair. Especially because I imagine the sisters are getting a little older.
Would you consider this? You moved here recently. How stymied were you by the rents here?
With trying to find an apartment and what I'm paying for rent, I would have absolutely considered this.
Wow.
And let's be real, I'm in bed by 11 p.m. most nights anyway. So fine.
She has a great life.
Give me some nice vaulted ceilings and a garden. I'm there.
Sure nice, there are waiting lists, so you're right.
Really? Okay.
So this is a big thing. Another big thing. This is from Bloomberg. Brides, they are hiring witches to save their $100,000 wedding days. Okay, what am I talking about? So weddings, right? Huge expense. Brides want to make sure everything goes smoothly, right? So they're hiring witches to cast a spell, like a good weather spell. So they're going on places like Etsy, where you can hire them.
I always go for my witches
of course.
as well.
For anywhere between $15 and $30. It's not expensive, but considering all the money you put down for a wedding, do they work? What do you think?
I would say no, but I don't know. I see that there are some deals to have.
There are like a lot we got Etsy witches.
As we see this scrolling, I'm impressed by how many there are.
It depends. Okay, so at one time, they had a bride that said it did work. Okay. She paid $100,000 for her wedding. She had a wedding in like February in Chicago. It was 55 degrees, it turned out. So not bad for February in Chicago.
So we're not going to attribute that to like global warming or El Nino. We're going to attribute it to
witches.
Love, cast, extra spell, or perfect weather, 5 stars.
But see, here's the thing. It's not
just
weddings.
How do the nuns feel about this as well?
It's not just good weather things, but a lot of people are turning to witches for other things like getting the Knicks to win the championship.
Oh, interesting. Have you done that?
I have not, but I might be searching.
Okay.
Would you do
that?
Go
to Etsy. I would not do that. I'm very skeptical of all of this, but I think these are probably bots. I don't know. I love how there's like a guarantee. It's like if it doesn't work, it's free. Well, you're paying like what, $8? How much are you paying for this?
It's like between 10 and 15, $30 tops.
I don't know. You sports fans are so superstitious. Like, why not? Like, you've done everything else. You changed your clothes in the middle of the game the other day because you thought you were jinxing them.
I did. I'm very superstitious.
Witches having a moment.
They are having a moment.
I don't know.
You want to keep it on the Knicks theme?
Witches or Knicks? Keep it on the Knicks.
Keep it on the Knicks.
Yeah.
Let's keep it on the Knicks.
All right.
Okay, this one's from Bloomberg, okay? Knicks boost fortune of New York City's most hated owner by $450 billion. We're talking about James Dolan, okay?
Yeah.
So he's known for like feuding with fans, banning enemies from MSG. After he took over, the Knicks struggled for like most of the 2000s. It's been pretty tough. He's laughing all the way to the bank. His net worth has climbed $450 million this year to $1.9 billion. Okay, that's according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. And it's not just the Knicks. I mean, the Sphere, that's also a big part
company,
of it.
But it's doing incredibly well.
Have you been?
I have not been. I'd like to go. I know that friends
I
have
haven't,
gone.
but we've talked about it, and I'm not usually like a big concert person,
Go
but
see a movie.
I would
You go
absolutely
see a
go see
movie.
The Wizard of Oz, or I would go like channel my tween self and go see Backstreet Boys. It just seems
Would
like a
you do
really
that?
cool. I would. I was not a crazy fan in the day. I just think it is light and harmless,
I
and
don't
everybody
believe that.
seems to be having
I
a
think
great
she definitely
time.
was a crazy fan back in the day. Only a crazy fan would say, I wasn't a crazy fan back in the day.
I really wasn't. I promise
Okay,
I wasn't.
all right.
But
New Kids on the Block?
But I'm a little bit too old for me.
Oh,
More Backstreet Boys.
mea culpa, sorry.
Okay. Get it straight,
NSYNC?
David. Get it straight.
98 Degrees?
No. But that
I'm
was
really
the thing.
trying
They
to
were
hit
around.
one.
They're around. I'm very impressed with your boy
Well,
band
I
knowledge
try to keep culturally aware.
from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm still working on my back
Lisa's
catalog.
like,
You're
moving on,
scaring
moving
me,
on.
David
Sorry,
Gura.
okay.
Let's give it the Wall Street Journal. Okay, this one
I
is
kind of
about
lost track of what that story was about. I feel like we've
Apparently, it's
digressed
about
so
your
much.
deep knowledge of millennial boy bands.
Yeah.
It is.
All right.
All right, this one is about college students, right? Okay, this one's from
Menudo
the Wall Street
was
Journal.
another one, right?
They are using
Boys
this.
to Men.
Menudo, yes,
Sorry.
really smart. Very good.
Shut up.
You're
so
Sorry,
distracting
Lisa.
me.
I'm so
Stop.
sorry. Okay.
Okay. Students, they're using this back door to attend their dream school. So let me explain. This is in the journal. So basically, there's students who don't get into these major public universities. They're still getting in on the action. So how they're doing it, they're enrolling in the online programs. They're enrolling in nearby community colleges of these major universities. So they're paying a little extra fee so they get this access to the gym, the student football game tickets. So they get all the things. They live in private housing near campus. They're not getting, the dorm life. They're not getting the in-class action, but they're getting to experience this at a cheaper price.
Interesting.
And a lot of universities are trying this out and seeing if it works.
Getting
And
those
it seems to be
academics, which are
working.
such a
lot of people
sideshow.
doing it. A lot more people doing it.
It's
Increasingly.
crazy how much that is not what kids are choosing colleges on. I mean, my college is almost unrecognizable now because they've redone almost the entire thing to make it more attractive to kids who want to have cool stuff.
Interesting. BTW, Lisa Mateo. I'll try not to interrupt so much next time. I feel like I did too much interrupting and too much digression.
I make neither of those promises,
Well,
but it's always a pleasure.
It makes it move along.
Makes it move along. Stories you may have missed on the Bloomberg terminal or Bloomberg.com with Lisa Mateo, BTW, BT Dubs, if you will, by the way.
And if you
Bloomberg
want to
this
send
weekend.
some good witch
No,
energy
don't
our way.
Jinx. I don't want to be jinxed. I feel like that could
No, you don't want
backfire.
good or bad?
I feel
All
like
right.
a light would fall or
All right.
something.
David Gura's anti-witch here.
We are coming up on 8 o'clock in the morning here in New York City.
The next hour of Bloomberg This Weekend starts right now.
Welcome to Bloomberg This Weekend, live from New York with David Gura, Christina Ruffini, and Lisa Mateo. The latest headlines, key analysis, big interviews, and the stories that hit home on your days off.
Welcome back to Bloomberg This Weekend. It is 8 a.m. in New York. We're coming to you live from Bloomberg's World Headquarters. I'm Christina Ruffini.
I'm David Gura, alongside Lisa Mateo, bringing you the latest breaking news, reporting analysis, live this morning and every weekend from 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock Wall Street time. We got this tweet from Pakistan's foreign minister indicating that perhaps there could be a deal, a memo of understanding signed electronically, he indicated, within the next 24 hours. Of course, we'll be on air tomorrow within that window, so should that happen,
We'll be here.
we'll bring that to you. If it happens in the next couple of hours, we'll bring it to you as well. But an interesting development here is we've seen this back and forth, which we've seen play out weekend after weekend. It does seem a bit different this time. The level of kind of engagement
Yes.
we've seen from both sides here, from the Pakistanis as well, indicating that maybe something is in the offing here around the G7, which starts on Monday.
And I was talking to some Middle East sources this week, and they are heading to Europe. They are looking at venues. They're taking this very seriously. But look, we saw this before, talking to our friends in Islamabad, where they got to, the red carpet stage, and it still didn't happen. So we're hoping There is some sort of an agreement here, but that red carpet can always be pulled out at the last minute
Still there,
if
the posters
deal.
and red carpet remain.
That's
and if it's electronic, don't even take them out of the closet.
That's very interesting to me. I've covered diplomacy for a long time. The signing ceremony, the switching of the pens, this is usually a big...
It's like an Adobe Acrobat. Put your signature on it.
Right? A little CAPTCHA thing? Do you have to hit the bicycles before you can sign the peace accord?
Yes.
I don't know how this works. We're going to ask Lisa Mateo. I don't think
We
she knows
won't.
how it
We will
works
not make
either,
Lisa
but no,
respond
we're
to
not. But
that.
she's gonna run us through the morning's headlines. Lisa, what you got?
You got it. We'll get to our other top story. That is SpaceX. It is now one of the world's most valuable companies, and it turned its founder Elon Musk into the world's first trillionaire. There you go. The SpaceX team rang the NASDAQ closing bell in Times Square, New York yesterday. Musk was at the company's headquarters in Starbase, Texas, where he rang the exchange's opening bell remotely. The company's first day on the stock market also handed buyers of the $75 billion IPO a 19% return. Now, the shares jumped as much as 31% above their $135 offering price before closing, at up 19% at just over $160. That left the company's market cap at $2.2 trillion. Well, to the war in Ukraine, where Pakistan's prime minister says he expects the finalization of a U.S.-Iran peace deal within 24 hours. Now, this comes as the U.S. says an interim peace deal that reopens the Strait of Hormuz and ends Iran's nuclear weapons ambitions could be signed within days. A senior administration official estimated an 80 or 85% chance that an accord gets signed soon. Now, that senior official said a deal would ensure Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon program, but would let it maintain a civilian nuclear energy program, adding that it would also end both sides' blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. If all terms are met, the U.S. would ease sanctions on Iran. Now, it's not clear whether Tehran has agreed to those same terms. All comes as the G7 world leaders prepare to meet in France next week. And workers at the Kennedy Center, they were putting up scaffolding late into the night to begin removing President Trump's name from the building. Now, the president's hand-picked board at the center lost a last-minute appeal to keep that name up. So let's take a look at a live picture at the center now. The board says the work has been delayed due to thunderstorms in the Washington, D.C. area. So you see the kind of scaffolding there kind of covered up. It's hard to tell if the work was continued. They're asking to take that down. A lot of people were there yesterday. Laura Bly from Virginia, she was one of them.
I've been standing here on the Kennedy Center Plaza with my cardboard signs. This one says JFK, not DJT, because I want to bear witness that we hope they're going to be removing Trump's name from our beautiful Kennedy Center.
All right, well, after a weeks-long visit to Spain, Pope Leo had some travel trouble. His Iberia charter that was due to take him back to Rome, it was grounded by a technical problem on Friday, but no worries, Spain's King Felipe came to the rescue, offering up his private jet instead. Leo, members of a delegation, they boarded the plane and took off more than 3 hours after he was originally due to leave. David and Christina, even the Pope has some
helps to have friends in high places, maybe looking for some good
classy jet.
Put in a good word with the big guy if I lend you your plane.
It's like that, like the witch's spell would be good luck if you were able to offer your private jet to the Pope.
I think prayers in general are welcome, no matter who you're offering them up
yes.
to. All right, thanks, Lisa. Just about 24 hours ago, before becoming the world's first trillionaire, Elon Musk said this about this startup he had called SpaceX.
I give SpaceX less than a 10% chance of succeeding at all, to be clear. In fact, I told people this. I said, look, we're probably going to fail, but we should give it a try, because if we don't, if there's not a new company that enters space, we will never be a truly spacefaring civilization.
Some 2 decades later, SpaceX had the largest ever IPO. It's now one of the most valuable companies in the world. Joining us now, Lauren Grush, Bloomberg space reporter, Bailey Lipschultz with us as well. Both of them are bylines on this big take story you can find at Bloomberg.com or on the terminal. Ed Ludlow, another one of the bylines. We'll get Ryan Gould in the mix here at some point as well. Lauren, let me turn to you first and just ask you for a vibe check on all of this. Going into the IPO yesterday, it was kind of a split event. You had some executives here in New York, at NASDAQ, at Times Square. There were others who were at SpaceX's headquarters, Elon Musk among them. I was struck by how Elon Musk was surrounded by a lot of employees, many of whom have woken up here, maybe not as fabulously wealthy as Elon Musk, but are certainly
they had a good day.
Rich individuals after what happened here.
Absolutely, and I think it was, probably for them a well-deserved moment of celebration. I know there were celebrations across all of SpaceX's sites. Don't think a lot of work got done, which is actually abnormal for SpaceX because, most of these employees have been working 12-hour days, weekends. It's a very work-heavy culture. In fact, burnout culture is kind of part of the strategy a little bit at SpaceX. And another thing that, when it comes to their compensation, they take a bit of a lower salary compared to the rest of the industry, but they get these stock options. And so for them, it's been a long time payoff for all that hard work that they've put into the company.
Bailey, Lauren got the first question because she came in and is here on set, and I'm always going to give you a hard time when you don't come in and join us.
I feel it's unfair.
But that's fine.
It's been a long week for all parties involved.
No, it really has. We appreciate you. Listen, the stock closed 19% higher at about $161 per share. But not everybody got to buy it. We were talking with Ed in the 7 a.m. hour about it. It was 4, possibly 5 times oversubscribed. And I asked him the same question. Is this like if you're in line, stay in line, you will get to invest in, bases on Mars when it's your turn? How does this happen now? How do you, if I wake up today and want this stock, how do I get it? And how much of the stock went to big bankers, big investments versus small retail consumers?
Well, once the stock started trading, anyone with a brokerage account could buy it. So you just can't buy it at the IPO price, which was $135.
Got it.
And as we reported throughout the process, that was a fixed price, something abnormal, something Elon Musk wanted to do to kind of draw the line in the sand, if you will. The allocation process did skew heavily towards institutions, but we did see a lot of retail demand. So we saw the retail portion take about 20%, so $15 billion, which is larger than the vast majority of every IPO that's ever happened. So not a small feat there. But the remaining chunk was sold to institutions, heavily skewed towards so-called long-only funds, people who have known SpaceX, people who have known the company. And the big kind of pitch has been, long, if you're getting allocated in this IPO process, we want you to show up when we have this massive unlock throughout later this year, when you do have, north of $1 trillion potentially in shares for sale, to step up and support the stock, not people who wanted to make a quick 20% profit, which we typically see. Obviously, people have to sell. That's how stocks open. Someone has to sell, someone has to buy. But that certainly is how that process played out. And we did hear that, much like many of these big deals, much like founder-led companies, Elon Musk and CFO Brett Johnson were very heavily involved in that allocation process and going through who was getting what.
We see the exuberance. We see that manifest in what happened with the stock yesterday. There are also critics of what's unfolded here. Jim Chanos among them. He spoke at a conference in New York this week, spoke on Bloomberg Money, on Bloomberg Television yesterday as well, talking about the prospects for this company and the valuation that he thinks is way higher than it should be. Let's take a listen to what Jim Chanos had to say.
Is it Elon premium times 2 or Elon premium divided by 2? I think that's really the question here, because there are people who believe in Elon and have bid up Tesla accordingly to well beyond where I think most fundamental analysts think it's worth. Now you have another Elon hopes and dreams company with an even bigger valuation. Neither of them, let's face it, are being valued on their operations.
Not valued on their operations. Lauren, let me turn to you on this, because you go through that prospectus and there are all these caveats about when these next adventures that SpaceX plans to embark on might happen, if they might happen at all. Indeed, there's this caveat that, in fact, it might not come to pass. Why were investors, so many of them, so willing to bet on Elon Musk? I've been doing this kind of parallel to back to Tesla, where I think there was more skepticism about making effectively a kind of blind bet on the magic of Elon Musk and what it could lead to. It does seem like if you look at the banks that have worked on this deal, the number of investors, people are willing to give him not even just a pass, but kind of climb onto that bandwagon more easily than they were in the past.
Well, I think with SpaceX, I would often categorize it as his most successful company. And I think the reason that they felt confident that they could put those numbers in the prospectus and present essentially a money-losing business is because they are banking on people to remember the past success that they've had with their company so far. I mean, when you look at the resume of SpaceX compared to the rest of the space industry, it is quite remarkable. They are, right now they have a de facto monopoly on heavy lift launch with their Falcon 9 rocket. They pioneered the commercial use of reusable rockets. They are the backbone of our space program right now, for better or for worse. They're the only way we can get astronauts to the International Space Station from U.S. soil. They are by and far, they're an elite launch provider for NASA, for the Defense Department. So when you put all that together, I think what SpaceX is hoping is that you will take that past success and you'll believe that they can replicate it with this brand new adventure that they're embarking on.
Lauren, what happens if a new administration comes in and says, we don't have the money for NASA, we're not using your company anymore, these are cuts? What happened if a competitor to Starlink, which people are trying to do, comes up, is able to do it cheaper? If China comes up with its own version that starts getting purchased other places? So much of what the value in this company is and what I think people are trying to invest in is really contingent on some outside factors. What happens if those things go away?
No, that's such a great point. I mean, in the prospectus, they mentioned that customer A, which is thought to be the aggregate of the U.S. government, is by and large one of their biggest customers. So yes, when it comes to how SpaceX was able to get to this point, taking contracts from the U.S. government, a huge factor in being able to develop the Falcon 9, develop their Crew Dragon capsule, and get to this point. However, what we have also seen is that they've been able to use the hardware that they developed with that money and those contracts to go beyond the need for the government as much as they used to need it for. So, for instance, their Starlink connectivity service, that has been growing. Its revenue has easily eclipsed its launch business, as we saw in that filing as well. That will probably continue to grow. So they have been able to find ways to make money that don't rely on the U.S. government. And I think that's also a big part of this whole AI data center, vision that Elon has too, is they saw the success with Starlink and they thought, okay, how can we replicate that? But through, this AI dream that everybody is invested in right now.
Bailey, as you and Lauren have written in the piece in the Big Take today, there was a lot of motivation on Elon Musk and SpaceX's part to get out first, to go ahead of OpenAI and Anthropic. And I'm curious sort of what the debut yesterday says to those two companies about what happens next. Do they see SpaceX as having maybe whet investor appetite for those big IPOs that are coming down the pipe, or have they cannibalized some of what they hope to get when they go public in a matter of weeks or months?
I think it certainly proved that the plumbing can work. So nothing broke on NASDAQ. There were no real trading errors, which was a big win, I think, for the entire ecosystem. And I think it did prove that investors are willing to show up and support a company's valuation that very much is looking towards the end of the decade, if not the next decade. So that's a big win for both of those companies. David, the big question, though, I think going forward is, as every banker and CEO will say, the IPO is a moment in time. So what happens next week? Really, what happens in the lead up potentially to Anthropic and OpenAI going public as soon as the fall, when more shares of SpaceX are available for trading, when it gets included to the NASDAQ 100? You're looking at a lot of potential stock supply that can be inundating the market later this year. That has more risk to impacting the market than $75 billion. It is a lot of money. It is a heck of a lot of money. But when you look at that just in one moment in time, it really is kind of just the start of what the process will look like. It could be a very different kind of trading backdrop when all those things are taken into account later on in the fall, when you consider that we could be having Anthropic making its kind of way towards public markets as well.
Really, given the size of this company, are we all kind of invested in SpaceX, whether we are actually invested in SpaceX or not at this point?
Not yet, but you will. I think it's one of those things, again, that as Lauren mentioned, it's potentially integral to everything, whether it's AI, obviously the space monopoly. When you look at just market structure and market dynamics, this is already one of, I think, the 6th or 7th largest companies in the world. It's not yet really in those indexes that would be linked to people's 401ks, but it will be shortly. And really, when you just look at that as a potential backdrop, you have to keep in mind that even if it gets cut in half from here, it's still a $1 trillion company. It still would be like one of the 10 or 12 largest companies in the world. So it still is going to have some real critical mass.
Lauren, Bailey's talking about sort of what investors are going to be looking for here in the weeks ahead. IPO, a moment in time. Walk us through the priority list that SpaceX has going forward. They have this massive rocket that is so critical to all of their operations, and they have yet to have a wholly successful launch and return of it. That priority number one, what for them is most important now post-IPO?
Sure, that is priority number one. It's also priority one for me
to make. Well.
Yeah, just in terms of a coverage perspective. But yes, you mentioned Starship. Starship is their massive rocket that they're building down at their South Texas launch site called Starbase. That's where Elon Musk was to ring in the bell.
And it has to be reusable, right? Or the margins don't really work.
That is the goal. I mean,
okay.
and you have to understand, unlocking that has been something that the spaceflight enthusiasts have wanted to do since we started launching rockets. The idea that we can bring back both pieces of the rocket fully intact and then, with minimal refurbishment, fly them again. Yes, as they laid out in that prospectus, if it doesn't reach that full reusability, the economics probably don't work because there is going to be costs associated with flying it again. And we're talking about flying Starship, I think they've said thousands of times, in a given time span. They want to just fly it back to back. They want it to come back, refly it again. That has just never been done before. I will never say never with SpaceX that they can't achieve it, but it's still a very long road of development ahead that they have to achieve. And so, with each of these Starship test flights, we will be watching them very intently. Now the public will be watching them even more so as well.
And their portfolios.
Exactly.
Yes. Celebrations in Texas, celebrations in California, and Hawthorne, I imagine, as well. We celebrate you guys as well. It's been a long week for all of you, and you've done yeoman's work contributing to this coverage that's really driven the stories across the terminal and on Bloomberg.com over the course of the week. Thanks to both you, Bailey Lipschultz and Lauren Gresh, here with us in New York.
All right, Pakistan's prime minister says a U.S.-Iran deal could be signed by this time tomorrow. Could there be a breakthrough before the G7 conference in France? That is straight ahead on Bloomberg this weekend. We'll be talking to our colleagues who cover the State Department and who cover kind of foreign policy and economics about this long-running will they, won't they, can they, will they deal.
Yes, and one that has been playing out weekend after weekend after weekend. But again, it seems like that G7 could be the forcing mechanism that both parties have needed to, if not get to the table, at least find some agreement on that.
They're already at a table, so maybe they could do it while they're there.
Right. Multi-purpose table.
Stick with us. We'll be right back.
Thank you for joining us live on Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm Lisa Mateo. Let's update you on today's stories. Homes, infrastructure, and Roman ruins have been left damaged after attacks by Israel on the Lebanese city of Tyre. Now, the port city has been the target of near-daily Israeli airstrikes that have leveled entire buildings and forced many residents to flee to safer areas in the country. Meanwhile, Russian strikes impacted two regions of Ukraine on Friday. Now, according to the State Emergency Service of Ukraine, 6 people were injured in Sumy and 2 in the Odessa region. The strikes also damaged residential buildings and civilian infrastructure. A ship carrying nearly 100 tons of food and basic necessities arrived in Havana from Colombia yesterday. The ship was escorted by a small Cuban auxiliary vessel. Now, this all comes during the U.S. energy blockade. And the cleanup, it continues in areas south of Chicago after tornadoes swept through the area. The storm left several 100,000 customers in Illinois and Indiana without power on Friday, and dozens of flights out of Chicago airports were canceled or delayed. Now, those storms, they're actually part of the same system that's going to bring strong and severe thunderstorms to part of the mid-Atlantic and also the Northeast. The National Weather Service saying, though, it will help to bring down those record-breaking temperatures that we've been suffering here in the Northeast.
Be toasty. All right. Thank you, Lisa.
Breaking news this morning is Pakistan's prime minister says he expects the U.S.-Iran peace deal to be finalized within the next 24 hours. And President Trump has indicated Vice President J.D. Vance and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff would represent him at any deal signing.
But when exactly will that be?
Yes,
Back with
question.
us is Bloomberg's Washington Deputy Bureau Chief Laura Davidson, and also with us is Chris Kennedy. He's the lead for economic statecraft at Bloomberg Economics, and he served as the director for international economics on the NSC under both Presidents Biden and Trump. Chris, I'm going to start with you. What are you hearing when you look at what is happening around this possible deal signing? We've got word from some folks in the Middle East that they're looking at venues. Like, I hate using this word, but the vibes seem to be there in a way that we haven't really seen before. We've also got this interesting tweet, messaging coming out from the U.S. Embassy in Bern saying, expect significant disruptions if you're in Geneva. G7 summit is around, and also there could be things happening. What do we think the odds of this coming together in some sort of tangible form in the next couple of days are?
Well, thanks so much for having me on again. So I'm optimistic, cautiously. It sounds like both sides have toned down their messaging and they're trying to get at least to the stage where we can have an MOU in place that would allow traffic to again resume flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, that's just the first step. But, like you said, I think the vibes seem to have shifted. And notably on the messaging from the Iranian side, where it's been a little bit more muted than in previous, instances where we've had this back and forth. And I think that that's good, because in the end, this is really going to be a large function of, how the messaging comes together on both sides. Both sides are very sensitive to, the question on who's getting a better deal.
I want to put up a tweet here from the foreign minister of Iran, if we have it, and I'll read it for our radio audience as well, talking about this memo of understanding. And in his estimation, it's, quote, never been closer. Pending its finalization, the media should refrain from entering speculation about its content. In line with our responsible and transparent approach, he continues, all details will be shared with the public in due course. Laura, with that, I'll turn things over to you. And I'm curious what you made of that. We kind of saw that message in his tweet, a similar message from Vice President J.D. Vance. There's a lot of reporting surrounding what might be in this memo, based in part,
much of it from Iranian outlets,
based in part on kind of the semi-official news agency in Iran. With that long preamble, my apologies for it. What do we know of what might actually be signed here in the next 24 hours, should it happen?
Yeah, we both have both sides sort of saying, look, just trust us. We've got this. But it's unclear if they trust each other, and sort of what parts of the deal that each side have been talking about have been quite different. That's not to say that they can't both be in the same MOU. But we have, the U.S. really focusing on Iran agreeing to give up its nuclear program, that it, could have a civilian nuclear program, but not something that could transfer into weapons, that the Strait of Hormuz would be completely opened, and that the U.S. would cease the military presence there. That's something that the Iranians have been very focused on, in addition to sanctions relief. So you see both sides sort of focusing on the pieces of the deal that are important to them, but there's a lot of sort of devils in the details here. One of, what does opening the Strait of Hormuz look like? Does that look like going back to what it was like before the war started, or is there some sort of tolling system or other sort of more Iranian control over that waterway? Also, when it comes to Iran giving up its nuclear stockpiles, this is something that Trump has said that it must do. Iran has been very, resistant to that. There was also some CNN reporting saying that Iran was, essentially kind of burying those stockpiles deeper into mountains, making it harder to get. You could see a scenario where, Iran says, look, we'd just love to hand that over, but we just can't drill through that mountain to get to it. So there's a lot of gamesmanship that can be played around the words that are on the page, if a deal does come together.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I was trying to figure out what the scenario was there, if it's happening, if it's because it's, to your point, oh, we'd love to give it to you, but it's too far and we can't access it, or look, it's not a threat anymore, it's underground and nobody can get to it. Chris, I also want to ask you about potential spoilers. One of the reasons that you have officials in any kind of negotiations, hostage negotiations, diplomatic negotiations, because they can be so fraught, and because one thing can spiral and unravel these very tense talks, there's a couple stories circulating around. I know you touched on one of them. We were talking this morning. One of them is this UAE story that they were willing to unfreeze some Iranian assets. The UAE has pushed back against that. And there's also this thing that appeared in the Post yesterday that Qatar struck a deal with Iran to kind of low-key shut down gas production if Iran wouldn't strike those facilities anymore. And Qatar has said that's not true and pushed back against that. Why are these stories surfacing now? And do you think they will impact the talks?
Yeah, so the release of frozen funds is obviously a very sensitive topic for both President Trump and the Iranians. The Iranians appear to be, still expecting some release of frozen funds up to $24 billion, either ahead of the signing or perhaps, as the 60 days of negotiations moves forward. And then, of course, the direct negotiations with the Emiratis and the Qataris. There's been other reports about outreach just to the Gulf Arab states from the Iranians to try to reset and get to some sort of new economic and security situation that's a little bit more sustainable. I don't think the Trump administration or the Iranians will be able to keep it under wraps if there is an unfreezing of funds. That will, of course, precipitate comparisons between this deal and the Obama nuclear deal, the JCPOA back in 2015, which notably did not include the release of frozen funds until after both sides had agreed on very comprehensive and credible, management of Iran's nuclear program. Of course, another big spoiler, you mentioned spoilers, is Israel. And Iran appears to still be linking the situation in Lebanon to its agreement with this particular deal, and it's still unclear whether Israel will be willing to abide by whatever the Iranians and the Americans work out this weekend.
And already seeing some criticism from some right-wing politicians in Tel Aviv saying this is a win for Tehran and a loss for Benjamin Netanyahu.
Chris Wright, the Energy Secretary, was in Houston yesterday. He sat down with our colleague Anne-Marie Horder, and they had a wine-ranging conversation. And one of the things they talked about, which is something that's really central to these negotiations, is what happens with the Strait of Hormuz. Let's take a listen to what he had to say just about the state of flows out through the strait right now.
And we're just going to restore flows ourselves. And flows today close approaching half of the gap, and they're rising. So ultimately, we will restore flows with or without them.
So 7 million barrels a day are getting out right now?
That's a rough estimate, a rough average of where we are right now, and it's rising.
A rough estimate, he says. Laura, let me turn to you. That was a red headline on the terminal when he said that yesterday. How in keeping is that from what we know of flows out of the Strait of Hormuz and our understanding of sort of what's been able to get out of there in recent days?
That's a little bit of a rosy estimate, though we do know that there has been oil that has been getting out, both by taking sort of the southern route, hugging closer to the coast of Oman, as well as that some Iranian oil has also been getting out, kind of going that northern route there. So this is not the situation that we had, just several months ago, where it was really at a complete standstill. But it's much more of a trickle than a gushing flow there, and that is kind of what is continuing to cause a lot of angst about kind of if there is some sort of deal to reopen the strait, who gets to go through, who gets priority. We've continued to see skirmishes as recently as last night when the U.S. shot down some Iranian drones in the Strait of Hormuz area. That continues to be sort of the hottest point of this war, with lots of different back and forth there in recent days. So this is going to be sort of the key issue, and probably the first sign, if this MOU, if it's signed, if it's working, that we'll be able to sort of see either a breakdown in this, or that that both parties are coming up with some sort of solution that they can both live with.
Speaking of a solution that, they both and hopefully everyone can live with, Chris, there's also some unclear messaging coming from Iran saying that they want to maintain control of the strait, and in a way that has not been previously, and that will be part of this deal. Obviously, that seems like the crux of the deal and the main thing the U.S. and Gulf allies and regional allies want to negotiate away from. Do we have any idea what the status of the strait will be, and if you think there will be some organization that, monitors it, even if they agree to do it for free? Do you think the dynamics of that strait will change no matter what in this negotiation?
I think certainly for the foreseeable future, Iran will continue to claim it has the ability to control access to the strait. I mean, that will be a continued point of leverage that Tehran, looks to as, assuming we get to an MOU, as the technical negotiations over the nuclear program, et cetera, continue to proceed. So whether that involves the payment of funds to Iran, I think that's questionable, but clearly Iran and Iran pointing to Oman plans to continue exercising at least a stated control over the Strait of Hormuz. And I just wanted to add one thing to what Laura mentioned. I think it's true. It's surprising, and it's good that some additional oil is getting out of the strait. But if we look at global oil inventories, they continue to drop, particularly in the U.S. And so, the reality is the global energy system the pressure on that system continues to grow. Emergency reserves can only last for so long. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of why we're seeing this push to get a deal as quickly as possible from the American side.
That's Chris Kennedy with Bloomberg Economics, Laura Davison, our Washington Bureau Chief, joining us as well. Thanks to both of you for your time on this Saturday. And Christina, I just want to bring up a piece of research from one of Chris's latest notes. It's a chart that he made of President Trump's strikes that he's undertaken here during his second term. And you see how many of them have been on Iran. And it just gets to this point that I've kind of wrestled with a lot as we've had this kind of back and forth weekend after weekend, is what kind of ceasefire is this? And of course, that's really what's central here. And as we've been talking about with Laura and with Chris, we're talking about a 60-day continuation of what's in place. The strikes have continued. Yes, they've been more selective, but it's not a customary ceasefire in a way that we'd think of.
No, and it's not even we've seen large strikes, and it's going to be interesting to see if this is the status quo, if this is what they're happy with, or if they want even fewer strikes than we have. But if you look at that chart, the U.S. is certainly taking action.
Just to describe it, more than 14,000 strikes worldwide. The vast majority of them, more than 10,000 of them, have been taken in the Iran war. So we've seen the president lean heavily kinetic warfare here. And I think another conversation we've had and should have again soon probably is the degree to which that's depleted the arsenals that the U.S. has, just doing so much.
And not just in the U.S., our ability to supply other allies, including in Europe. And there's a hot war in Ukraine, and munitions are much needed there. And the U.S. has told folks we usually supply, hang on, we got to make sure we restock our own supplies first. All right, coming up, Team USA notches its first victory in the 2026 FIFA World Cup. But will politics overshadow the world's biggest sporting tournament? We'll speak with a former professional U.S. soccer player next on Bloomberg This Weekend.
Thanks for joining us live on Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm Lisa Mateo. Let's update you on today's top stories. A federal judge has cleared the way for the UFC Freedom 250 match to take place on the South Lawn of the White House tomorrow. A legal advocacy group had tried to block the event, which is part of America's 250th anniversary celebration and President Trump's 80th birthday. The UFC is footing the bill for the $60 million production, while federal agencies fund the security and law enforcement presence for the weekend. And a big day in sports tonight. The New York Knicks take on the Spurs in San Antonio. The Knicks lead the series 3-1 and could take home the championship today if, and I say if, a Game 6 is needed. It'll take place Tuesday night in New York. In the NHL playoffs, the Carolina Hurricanes and the Vegas Golden Knights, they battle it out tomorrow in the Stanley Cup Finals. Carolina, they lead the series 3-2. And with the World Cup fever in the air, soccer legend David Beckham has added another honor to his resume, a star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Beckham was the first English soccer player to win league titles in 4 countries. That's England, Spain, the U.S., and France, and is largely credited with helping broaden the sport here in America. He became the co-owner of Major League Soccer club Inter Miami in 2018 and helped sign Lionel Messi. All right, let's get to World Cup action. Yesterday, the U.S. topped Paraguay 4-1, and there was a 1-1 tie between Canada, Bosnia, and Herzegovina. Today, Qatar, they take on Switzerland, Brazil battles Morocco, and Haiti plays Scotland. David and Christina, a lot of action today.
A lot of action, and I saw David Beckham in a box with Tom Cruise and his wife, Victoria Beckham, yesterday at that game.
Beckham in a box?
Beckham in a box, but...
They're good buddies.
Yeah, good friends, it seems. All right.
All right.
News of Team USA's win is not the only World Cup story getting headlines right now. If I may, I'll quote from a few of them. From The Atlantic, the divided World Cup this year's tournament was framed as a festival of North American unity. Instead, it is testing how much of that unity remains. From Politico, Knife's Edge, U.S.-Mexico relationship teeters as World Cup begins. And lastly, Christina from the Wall Street Journal, Trump's World Cup runs into his border security crackdown.
Jules Boykoff is a former professional and Olympic soccer player. He's also a professor of political science at Pacific University and an author. In The Guardian, he calls this World Cup, quote, the most politically combustible tournament in modern history. We spoke with him yesterday and asked why he thinks that is so. Here's his opinion.
Well, one might think, because there's 48 countries involved, that this could be the most inclusive World Cup ever. But instead, it's become all about exclusion. It's become all about international geopolitics and fractiousness. And it has to be said, a lot of it does come from the Trump administration itself. Let's not forget, this is the first time in the history of the World Cup where one of the host nations is actively bombing one of the participating nations. And it must be said, openly threatening war crimes against that nation as well. That nation, in turn, is bombing 3 other countries that are in this World Cup. So we've just never been in times like this before.
It is also interesting because it's spread out among 3 countries, right? You've got Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. And I think the idea was, these are NAFTA/USMCA signatories. They had a lot of trade when this plan came together. I don't think they realized how fractious this would be, even to the point where the Iranian team is staying in Mexico, but they have games in the U.S., and there's concerns that even if the team members get through immigration, maybe not all their support staff will get through. Why did that happen? Were they too idealistic in thinking that this could be pulled off seamlessly between these 3 countries?
Well, as somebody who studies bid documents for things like the World Cup and the Olympics, I do know that these things tend to be packed full of unicorns and rainbows and all happy things. I mean, if you look at that bid from Canada, Mexico, and the United States, it actually promises that everybody would get free transportation to the World Cup games in the United States. The problem is there's often a gap between what they promise in the bid and what eventuates when the actual tournament rolls around. Then you lacquer on top of that the fact that Donald Trump is an unpredictable guy, and people didn't actually expect him to be around for this World Cup. Let's not forget that everybody thought he'd maybe do 2 consecutive terms at the max, but he was out for 4 years, and now he's back and he's here for the World Cup. And nobody really expected the president of the United States to be threatening one of the other co-hosts to make it the 51st state in Canada, or threatening the other co-hosts to send in the U.S. military to take out their drug cartels. I mean, we're just in uncharted territory in so many different ways here.
I will say, though, the Olympics, World Cups, these things are always a little politically fraught, which is ironic because the ideal is that people come together and it's peaceful. I mean, when you go back to the Berlin Olympics, and when you talk about, different countries hosting FIFA, I think about the human rights allegations around the Qatari stadium builds and other people, and then the corruption scandal around FIFA bidding. Is it, speaking of unicorns and rainbows, is it kind of ridiculous to think about sports transcending politics when sports is now even more so political?
Well, you're talking to a political scientist, so it won't surprise you to hear that sports are politics through and through. Sports are politics by other means. And it's just, we can have some happy moments amid the politics as well. I mean, I happen to think that all of the sports mega events, Olympics, World Cup, are chock full of politics. And for me, that can also mean it makes it more interesting as a viewer and somebody who follows the sport carefully. But this type of fractious politics rooted in threats, making people feel like they're not actually welcome to come to the United States to participate as a fan in the tournament or as a player or a staff member on one of the teams that's qualified, that's quite different. I mean, you mentioned Qatar, even before that, the Men's World Cup in Russia. Your ticket to a match was your visa to the country. They made it super easy. I mean, in Russia, they gave you free tickets to go wherever you wanted in the country on their train system. So we're just looking at a very different situation here in 2026.
You also haven't had a lot of cooperation from the various municipalities in the United States. I mean, there have been some lovely success stories. It seems like the Algerian team who's in Lawrence, Kansas, is getting the welcome of their lives. And there have been some very nice stories of Europeans kind of discovering some quintessential American things like giant gas stations and the size of, a Slurpee. But it's also, you talk a little bit about whether or not the U.S. actually wanted the World Cup. Like, did the U.S., I know there was a bid in process, but do you think this was more FIFA driven? I mean, when you look at, we've talked on this show before about the price spike in tickets alone, what they are charging American fans to go see these games, if in fact they even want to go. Was this more FIFA driven, you think, than the fact that Americans really want this World Cup?
First, I just love all the people welcoming those from abroad to the United States. I mean, that is really one of the things that makes these events special.
Yeah.
And it's probably especially important right now to send the message to international visitors that you're welcome here. We value you here. We want you to be here. So, I mean, there's definitely that. FIFA most assuredly wanted to host the World Cup in the United States. I mean, I know Canada and Mexico are also hosts, don't get me wrong, but the United States is essentially a growth market for FIFA, alongside China, India, Indonesia. And so the other thing about it is FIFA's business model is essentially this. They socialize the costs as much as possible, and they privatize the benefits as much as possible. What I mean by that is they lop the cost of hosting the games, whether we're talking about the security for the games, the medical staff for the games, the fan fests for the games, the transportation to get to the games. All of that sits on the local host city's shoulders. And so that's a big cost that they socialize. On the flip side, they privatize the benefits. Think about all the TV sponsors that make off great from this. Think about all the corporate sponsors of FIFA that do really well. FIFA itself, I know it's a nonprofit organization, but
I learned that this week. I learned that this week that FIFA is a nonprofit, and I got to tell you, that threw me a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's surprising. So my point is just that the game is rigged. And another thing is it has changed enormously over time. When the United States hosted the World Cup in 1994, 9 of the 13 cities hemorrhaged money and lost money. And the contracts that they signed then were actually a lot better than the ones that many of the cities signed here. So I think that, to get to your question, is why a lot of people in many of these host cities are feeling jittery about these events. They started to wake up, and the scales fell from their eyes that, oh my gosh, we are on the hook for this, tax-paying public. And one example that I think illustrates what we're talking about is Mikey Sherrill, the governor of New Jersey. I thought she actually did a nice job explaining where she was coming from, saying these transport costs have been lopped on the shoulders of me. I didn't ask for this, and FIFA gives us $0. She was absolutely correct. And so there's tension now between the host cities that really didn't get a fair deal and FIFA that's going to walk off with a massive bag.
You be sure to check your picks with the Bloomberg World Cup bracket. You can go to BRKT Go on the terminal. I know you didn't do it.
Well,
I did
so
it.
David
Lisa
was trying to
Mateo
look
did
up
it.
some of our colleagues. It seems several of us did not do it, but Lisa did
are
it.
tied with
You're tied?
6 apiece. So we'll have our feud just as you and I have our feud.
Oh, we have so many feuds, it's really hard to keep track. All right, coming up, we're going to talk about coffee. How much is too much, and should we be cutting back? Stick with us.
Welcome back to Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm David Gura alongside Christina Ruffini. Plenty of Americans are emphatically unready to give up caffeine, but many are experimenting with a new range of options beyond the traditional hot cup of Java.
That's right. The traditional consumer is now keeping a minimalist approach to their caffeine intake to limit the negative health impacts of the drug. Well, it's my favorite drug. But here to talk to us about why people are doing this and whether or not I should do this is Bloomberg food industry reporter Christina Peterson. Okay. Why are people doing this, and to what extent? Is this popular? Are you seeing more and more people try to limit their caffeine, and what are the reasons behind it?
Yeah, I definitely don't think America is ready to give up all caffeine. I am not ready to give up my coffee. But I do think you see beverage companies offering more options that are lower in caffeine. And those might not replace traditional coffee. They might just be additional choices people would reach for in the afternoon, say, if they're trying to optimize their sleep. Or just not overdo it on caffeine. And there are a whole bunch of reasons why people are tracking this and watching this. I think some of the ones we've been watching are the rise of wearable technology, like the Oura Ring. People can really track the data and see if they consume caffeine at 2 p.m., say, how that affects their sleep at night. So that's one of the reasons fueling this. I think some of the others are just general health and wellness, especially among younger people, is really booming. People are looking at ingredients and just what they're putting in their body more closely. And related to that, I think, is the diminishing alcohol consumption, especially among young people. And sometimes people are looking for different beverages in the evening that aren't alcohol, but they want something that's not going to keep them up all night. And so a lower caffeine option might be a better choice for them then.
That's interesting, because I would think, like, if you're drinking less, you would replace it with coffee.
Maybe
but
have something.
I guess
a little
not.
buzz. No.
I guess
In
not.
fact, no. Can you walk us through like what some of these options are? So I'm sure that there are, there's decaf coffee, decaf tea, but what are the other kind of products that you're seeing kind of pioneered or put out there by companies?
Yeah, I mean, this is not new, but matcha, of course, is super popular. Hojicha is a even lower caffeine type of roasted tea. We're seeing half caffeinated blends launching from some of the big coffee companies. There's a Peet's half calf, a Starbucks half calf. We see some interesting kind of functional beverages. There's a sparkling iced tea from PepsiCo that has L-theanine that's supposed to sharpen your mental focus. There's a coffee cut with roasted dates. There's really all sorts of options out there. Some caffeine-free sodas. That's a category that's growing. Coca-Cola Zero Zero. Coke just relaunched that in Europe.
Yes, nothing. It's
zero
water.
caffeine and zero
It's water.
sugar.
Just drink water. I'm not going to lie. I did think you said for a minute that L-Fanning was in one of those beverages.
No.
I realized that is not what you said. That was something different. I mean, is this a fad? Is this going to be like people cutting back and then eventually they will give in to the demon that is caffeine addiction and it'll come rearing back? Or do you think this has staying power?
I think it's not going to be something that the whole population takes up. But I think for a certain segment, it is really popular. We do see sales of ground coffee and coffee beans declining and ready-to-drink options becoming more popular. So in that segment, decaf and lower caffeinated ready-to-drink coffee is really growing. That was a very small market before that we're now seeing really expand. I spoke with a company that's launching a decaf cold brew that's coming out in cans. There's not even a caffeinated version. It's just decaf. So it seems like they believe there is a market for this.
You cover the food industry. I'm very curious where this sort of thing comes from. Is there like evident demand that, yes, we're wearing our Apple Watches, we're seeing all this, and we want this thing? Or is this something that's been kind of promulgated by the companies themselves? Like, hey, here's something novel and new you might want to try and we can push out there.
Yeah, the food companies don't launch products unless they have data suggesting to them that there will be customers that want this. I think if you look at what's been selling in the food industry recently, the better for you category, the healthier feeling foods are selling very well, and they're able to command a premium. So there's really interest in Gen Z, millennials, boomers in this sort of healthier category. And I think that this fits into that. This is a kind of beverage that people can feel like they're not tanking, their night of sleep by consuming. And I think that's attractive to a lot of people.
I mean, I feel like this does tie into people cutting back on alcohol in that way, because coming soon to Bloomberg this weekend, we just went to Kentucky to talk to the makers of Jim Beam, and they are launching their first non-alcoholic product because they're seeing so much cutback from people trying to be health conscious, especially the younger generations. I mean, in that vein, have you tried this? People who have tried this, what did they say the benefits were? And then I will sit here and judge whether or not I'm willing to entertain this concept.
Yeah, I spoke with a lot of people who had given up caffeine entirely, and they sounded like they were really doing amazingly well. It was very persuasive to me. I can't quite give up coffee yet, but they said they had really noticeable drops in anxiety. They slept really well. One guy said he had dreams for months. I mean, it sounded heavenly. And then I spoke to some people who said it was really hard for them to fully give up coffee, and just cutting down a little bit was an easier way to go about doing it. Just a little bit of moderation.
Christina Peterson, thank you very much. And Christina, how much do you drink a day? How much coffee are you having? You go ahead, Christina. You tell us first. Two cups.
2 cups of coffee for me. Yeah.
Wow, Christina,
News
how about
cycle
you?
dependent.
I'm about 2, but there's usually espresso in that first one and quite a few shots. How about you, David?
High octane. 3 or 4.
Really?
It's constant, but it's free. I mean, it's available here.
Well, working here does not help. I mean, they have good coffee.
I will just, every time I walk by, I'll pick up a cup.
That's true. You are usually going to get a cup of coffee.
I
now that I
feel
think about
bad about that now that I say that aloud. Sometimes I think it could be 5. Makes me worried.
We'll work on it. Christina Peterson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Bloomberg This Weekend continues right now.
Coming up on Bloomberg This Weekend. SpaceX jumps 19% after the biggest IPO ever.
I give SpaceX less than a 10% chance of succeeding at all.
This morning, new Bloomberg reporting on Elon Musk's race to go public now as he wakes up as the world's first trillionaire.
Washington and Tehran signaling an interim deal to end fighting in Iran is close.
Maybe as soon as this weekend or Monday, we will get on the other side of this. Energy prices will come back down.
But overnight, the U.S. shot down Iranian drones near the Strait of Hormuz. What it means for talks. Plus,
Coming up on Bloomberg This Weekend, we're at Swarovski's flagship Fifth Avenue store to talk about pop luxury and why a little bit of bling can be a very fun thing. David, I did ask for some bling for you on set, but we'll have to work on that another time.
I haven't seen it yet. Welcome to Bloomberg This Weekend. We're coming to you live from Bloomberg's World Headquarters in New York. I'm David Gura.
I'm Christina Ruffini. We're here with Lisa Mateo. It is Saturday, June 13th, and we are still covering the story we've been covering pretty much since we launched the show, which is the war in Iran and the possibility of an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, being signed between those two parties as soon as tomorrow. But we have some breaking news about the timing of that we're going to get to in just a minute. First, we're going to go to Lisa with the headlines.
Yeah, and let's start with the war in Iran, where Pakistan's prime minister says he expects the finalization of a U.S.-Iran peace deal within 24 hours. Now, this comes as the U.S. says an interim peace deal that reopens the Strait of Hormuz and ends Iran's nuclear weapons ambitions could be signed within days. A senior administration official estimated an 80 or 85% chance that an accord gets signed soon. Now, the senior official said a deal would ensure Iran does not have a nuclear weapons program, but would let it maintain a civilian nuclear energy program, adding that it would also have both sides' blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Now, if all terms are met, the U.S. would ease sanctions on Iran. It's just not clear whether Tehran has agreed to the same terms. This all comes as G7 world leaders prepare to meet in France next week. SpaceX, now one of the world's most valuable companies, and it turned its founder, Elon Musk, into the world's first trillionaire. The company's first day on the stock market also handed buyers of the $75 billion IPO a 19% return. The shares jumped as much as 31% above their $135 offering price before closing up 19% at just over $160. That left the company's market cap at $2.2 trillion, surpassing Tesla. Now, both the debut of SpaceX and growing optimism around a U.S.-Iran interim peace deal, well, that pushed the markets higher Friday trading. The S&P 500 extended this week's gain, and U.S. oil, well, that settled below $85 a barrel. Concerns over inflationary pressures, well, that eased, with traders pushing their bets for a Federal Reserve interest rate hike into next year. Policymakers, well, they meet next week. And workers at the Kennedy Center, they were putting up the scaffolding late into the night to begin removing President Trump's name from the building. The president's hand-picked board at the center lost a last-minute appeal to keep the name yesterday. Crowds gathered at the site asking to take it down. Democratic Representative Joyce Beatty from Ohio said this is not over.
So it means a lot to have you and others coming out and standing here and writing letters and not letting them take us for granted, because this is bigger than this center. This is about all of us.
And in company news, the Justice Department has closed an antitrust investigation into Paramount Skydance's $110 billion purchase of Warner Brothers Discovery. In a statement, the agency said the deal is not likely to hurt consumers or competition in the film and television industry. Democrats in Washington and many in Hollywood, though, they disagree. David and Christina.
Lisa, thank you very much. Lisa, bringing up the fact that we heard from the Pakistanis just a little while ago about the prospects of an electronic deal being signed, a deal being signed electronically, I should say, here within the next 24 hours. Getting some pushback on that now from a spokesperson for the Islamic Republic of Iran's foreign ministry, telling an Iranian news agency that this is not the case, but there is still the possibility a deal could come in the coming days. That said, we at Bloomberg are reporting the limited details that have emerged on the deal suggest both sides, the U.S. and Iran, are proceeding with extreme caution, reluctant to make any real concessions before the other does.
One of the journalists behind that reporting, State Department reporter Eric Martin, joins us now. Also joining us is Bloomberg Jerusalem reporter Dan Williams. We're so happy to have both of you. Eric, I'm going to start with you. Should you be on a plane? Should you not be on a plane?
We're glad to have him here.
We are glad to see you. But to this timing issue, I mean, this is such a fast-moving story. As we were sitting here, our Mideast colleagues flagged these comments where the Iran Foreign Ministry spokesman said, regarding the exact timing of the signing of the memorandum, we must wait. Although it will not be tomorrow, the possibility that it could take place in the coming days is not ruled out. However, due to the other side's, read U.S., instability in making any statements about this process, caution must be exercised. We've seen similar messaging from White House officials saying the other side needs to stop leaking. We've seen criticism about leaks from the Vice President, J.D. Vance. Eric, where are we? Is this going to happen, or have we made much ado about nothing yet again?
Sure, Christina. So I think that the where of this, in terms of where this gets signed, is much less important than the what, particularly for the Trump administration. And so finally getting to that deal, which we've heard President Trump say dozens of times since April 7th or April 8th, that this deal was a few days away or was kind of just around the corner. Finally getting to that deal to reopen the strait and to end the blockade would be a big development here. And so I think that, as with everything with this process, we were a couple of months ago, I was in Islamabad and connecting with you guys from there and talking about the latest just hours after Vice President Vance had sat down with his Iranian and Pakistani counterparts. If we finally get to a deal here, it seems likely that it could take a little bit longer than, say 24 hours. I mean, that's just been the way that's been the trend for everything that's happened on this file over the last several months. And so it certainly makes sense that it could take a little bit longer than some of the most optimistic predictions about 24 hours or so.
Dan Williams, let me turn to you. From your perch in Jerusalem, I'm eager to hear sort of how the Israeli government is thinking about this as it all unfolds. We know that Prime Minister Netanyahu would be, if not eager for more strikes, would support more strikes on Iran, and he's very much on the margins of these negotiations that are taking place between the U.S. and Iran. What is the government's perspective on the prospects of this happening here within the next 24 or 48 hours?
Well, since details of this deal emerged just in the last 24, 48 hours, the official public statements have been very spare. The Prime Minister Netanyahu put out, I think, all of 2 statements. His defense minister put out 1 statement. The rest of the usually loquacious Israeli cabinet is avoiding the media so far. There's something of a sullen public silence here. I imagine behind the scenes, the leaders here are working the phones with the Trump administration, trying to figure out what is included in this deal, whether there's any wriggle room, whether there's any way of toughening up some of the terms. The Israelis are generally not happy with this. As you noted, there was a willingness here to go back to war in the absence of a deal that would satisfy the original conditions, demands set both by the Israelis and the Americans at the outset of this war. I mean, the Israelis aren't looking for more war. They are looking for a diplomatic conclusion that would preclude future war, as they would put it. And what they worry about is effectively this deal would leave Iran with vestigial, at least, capacity to re-pursue its nuclear program, to rebuild its ballistic missile program, to come up with the funding eventually for its regional proxies, and essentially empower it in the face of an unprecedented joint campaign against it by the world superpower and the premier military power of the Middle East, Israel. The optics here are very difficult for Israel, and the possibility that the terms of this deal may not satisfy its bottom line, its bottom threshold in terms of what it would consider a satisfactory outcome to this war.
Well, Dan, the terms of the deal have been a bit difficult for even some hardliners on the right here in the U.S. To stomach, because it looks like they will resemble the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, which we know Benjamin Netanyahu was openly very against. And you flagged to us this morning some tweets from a right-wing politician there in Israel talking about the emerging deal with Iran is a total victory for the Ayatollahs. It's a catastrophe from Israel's perspective, and blaming the prime minister. Does this create an even bigger political liability for him domestically as well?
Absolutely. We're 4 months away from an Israeli election. It's going to be tightly contested, as they often are in Israel. This time, it's a re-election bid for Netanyahu, who was already Israel's longest-serving leader. I think it's clear that he had a very different outcome in mind. The original scheduling had, within that 6-week window, the initial 6 weeks of the war, produce enough internal damage to the Iranians to bring about an organic downfall of the regime. Afterward, he was to have hosted Trump, who was due to receive the Israel Prize in Israel, and that would have really set him up for re-election. In the absence of something that conclusive, and keep in mind there are still live fronts in Lebanon, which, by the way, is not disconnected to these Iran talks, given that Iran's looking out for Hezbollah. And even in Gaza, where this war began 2.5 years ago, Netanyahu's going to have a lot of explaining to do to the electorate. He promised total victory. Israelis are exhausted. They've been bloodied. They've lost a lot in terms of international prestige, in terms of treasure and lives. And yet they're not really seeing that conclusion, any satisfactory conclusion in the offing. It's something he's going to have to try very hard to explain.
Eric, you spend your days going through detailed diplomatic cables, looking at documents, looking at deals. This is something unique. This is one page, I gather, maybe a couple more, but 14 points as we understand it from that semi-official news agency. I was struck by something in Bloomberg's reporting recently that a person familiar with these deliberations said the memorandum would be open to interpretation in certain areas, including what the reopening of Hormuz would mean in practice. It makes me wonder sort of how cohesive, how long-lasting this document is likely to be. We're talking about a fairly short time horizon here, 60 days, should this be signed and approved by both sides. How much credence should we give a document like this? We've seen a very messy ceasefire over these last few months.
David, in some ways, a document like this is a starting point for the tough negotiations to come. And so it doesn't deal in detail with the nuclear program. It's something I was talking the other day with Aaron David Miller, who is a former advisor to the State Department on negotiations regarding the Middle East. And he said this is really buying a ticket to the next tough negotiation, in that, you have things that each side is going to try to portray to their domestic constituencies as a win. But certain things like exactly, what disposing of nuclear material means, in whether that's downblending or moving material out of the country, as well as what reopening the strait means. I mean, does that mean that reopening with some degree of Iranian monitoring or control, or does that mean going back to February 27th? So these are questions that are somewhat open, as the officials told us, somewhat open to interpretation. But that's both a feature and a flaw, right? I mean, that's something that allows each side to sell this to their constituencies and to citizens as a win. But there's also room there for misunderstanding and for disagreement and conflict if one side feels like the other is violating something that they had committed to.
Eric, I also want to ask you about who the main players are here, because very openly we're seeing acknowledgement from the different sides that Pakistan is involved and has been mediating this. But I'm hearing, as I'm sure you are as well, from sources in the region, there are other regional players helping, assisting, advising, and possibly going to this signing ceremony if indeed it does happen. We're now hearing it could be a digital signing, not quite sure what that entails. Who are the regional players helping make this potentially happen? And then who are the negotiators? Is it still just mainly Witkoff and Kushner? We saw this Axios report that they'd actually gone to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which is a nuclear facility, to kind of buff up on their nuclear knowledge. Are they still leading it, and does the president still have faith in them?
Well, in terms of the intermediaries who we're seeing, certainly all countries in the region have an interest in and are invested in seeing this peace process come to fruition, but they also have to have ongoing relationships with Iran. So we've seen, we had reporting from colleagues earlier this week about UAE having meetings with the Iranians for the kind of highest level meetings that we've had since the beginning of the war to try to calm some of the tensions, lingering tensions between those two countries. Of course, we saw Iran, after the U.S. and Israeli strikes, lashing out and hitting civilian targets in the UAE. We've also heard about a role for Qatar in this process and being involved. So even though Pakistan has been the host to the negotiations that we saw in April and has been the one that's had its highest level officials going to Tehran to deliver messages or using phones in Pakistan to deliver those messages and then taken by courier to Mojtaba Khamenei, the new supreme leader in this process that takes days. So we've seen that from several countries involved there. And then, to your question about who from the U.S. is involved, we've very much seen still the vice president ultimately in the lead on this, but the details being negotiated by Witkoff and Kushner. We had some reporting that there was the potential for an in-person signing ceremony, perhaps in Geneva, and perhaps as soon as Sunday. That now seems to have been that speculation tamped down a little bit, such that we're now expecting this could take several more days, and that it could be this virtual kind of ceremony or virtual signing that the Pakistanis and Iranians have mentioned.
Dan, let me turn to you lastly here. We were talking about, you brought up Lebanon just a moment ago, and of course that's a roiling conflict still, despite the diplomatic efforts that we've seen engineered or tried to be engineered here in recent weeks. Where does that stand now, and what's your understanding of the degree to which that would be a part of any memo of understanding that's signed here?
Well, if you ask the Iranians, Lebanon has to be part of this. They've frequently and consistently called for a ceasefire, an end-of-war deal to apply to all fronts. That's code for Lebanon, specifically the front of warfare between Israel and Hezbollah, which is really Iran's main ally, a very efficient, very well-armed guerrilla force and political force in Lebanon. The Israelis have ruled this out. While Iran is their arch foe, the overarching threat to their security, Hezbollah is the most immediate, literally, on their northern border, at least until they pushed Hezbollah back with that invasion launched pretty much in parallel with the war against Iran over these months. The Israelis now have expanded a border security zone, what they call a buffer zone in southern Lebanon. That led to the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Lebanese civilians. It's also effectively driven Hezbollah north and disarmed Hezbollah to a large degree. Israel has no intention, it says, of withdrawing from that. It may delimit its attacks to that zone and hold off on attacking Hezbollah in Beirut, in the Lebanese interior. But that really looks likely to be a major bone of contention there. It's very important for the Iranians symbolically in terms of their power projection, in terms of their influence in Levant on the Mediterranean coast. It's very important for the Israelis in terms of security of up to 2 million of their northern residents who, until very recently, were in range of Hezbollah rocket fire and at risk of seeing a Hezbollah invasion of the kind Hamas pulled off on October 7th, 2023. So Lebanon really will be a sticking point. It seems the Israelis managed last week through sheer firepower to assert what they call their right to continue fighting there against Hezbollah, if not in Beirut, then in the south. Time will tell whether they will also work that into this deal, that exception, that lacuna for Lebanon into whatever's signed between the Americans and Iran.
Dan Williams in Jerusalem, Eric Martin in Washington with his finger on the button of his mouse on that Swiss Air site. Will he buy the ticket to Geneva? We'll see here
stand by to stand
hours.
by. All right, coming up on Bloomberg this weekend, modern luxury from one of the world's most iconic brands.
I think the world needs to think about luxury in a much more modern way.
Thanks for joining us live on Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm Lisa Mateo. Let's update you on today's top stories. President Donald Trump says the U.S. military has killed who he called the leader of the Tren de Aragua gang with help from Venezuela. Now, in a post on social media, the president said a swift and lethal kinetic U.S. strike killed Hector Rutherford Guerrero Flores. Now, Tren de Aragua has been labeled by the U.S. as a terrorist organization. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth posted on X that the strike took place earlier in the week on the group's compound in Venezuela. According to the U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton, the gang is responsible for countless acts of violence, extortion, and drug trafficking in North America, South America, and Europe. Well, Pope Leo has ended his weeks-long trip to Spain, but not before some travel trouble. His Iberia charter that was due to take him back to Rome, well, it was grounded by a technical problem on Friday. But no worries, Spain's King Felipe, he came to the rescue, offering up his private jet instead. Now, Leo, members of his delegation, they boarded the plane and took off more than 3 hours after he was originally due to leave. And a new luxury space deal is out of this world. Axios Space has teamed up with luxury Italian brand Prada to help design the inner liner of a new spacesuit. It's heading to the moon. It's designed to regulate body temperature and airflow during spacewalk. So there'll be right temperature, but also looking pretty good there in Prada.
I did ask, I love about this when it hit. I sent it to him, and he's like, what they end up wearing will be much more expensive than Prada.
It's so crazy how much they spend on that.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa. Swarovski Crystals, one of the best-known names in luxury jewelry, is in the midst of a major brand overhaul, hoping to modernize its image.
That's right. They're partnering with famous faces like Ariana Grande and Venus Williams, along with iconic Disney characters and even some Marvel figures. The Austrian company is turning a profit once again by focusing on what it calls pop luxury. We spoke with the CEO, Alexis Nasard, at their Fifth Avenue flagship store for this weekend's C-Suite Saturdays.
So explain to me what a Swarovski crystal is and why it is different or special from other products.
Swarovski is a pop luxury icon.
What do you mean by pop luxury?
We don't subscribe to some stale theories about what luxury is. And I think the world needs to think about luxury in a much more modern way. Those who have are winning, those who haven't aren't.
This is not what Swarovski stores looked like when I was growing up.
This is the Wonderlux concept. It's very different from what you'd think of a conventional retail experience. It's packaged as a big jewelry box.
I mean, it feels like that, or like shadow boxes, or like you're discovering things.
Exactly. That's the whole point. A treasure hunt. It's not that I'm coming purposefully to buy something specific.
Yeah.
I'm going to see what's out there. I'm curious. I touch things. I try stuff.
See, I didn't know I needed sparkly sunglasses, and now I feel like I do.
It's a necessity now.
Are you seeing a return on that investment? I mean, you guys were profitable for the first time in a couple years.
Yeah.
How's the company doing?
The company is doing very well. Over the last 4 years, we added 24 points of organic growth. 2025 was equally successful, up 6% organic, and we're growing at 3 times the rate of the jewelry market.
I mean, that's pretty good, especially when a lot of your competitors are seeing pretty flat growth right now.
Yeah. No, we're very happy with the results. I mean, we're proud, we're happy, but we should stay vigilant. The market is tough.
Yeah.
Consumer sentiment, as you've seen the latest data from the US, is at all-time low.
It is.
And it's still a discretionary category. So I told my guys, we keep the confidence, but we stay vigilant and we navigate on site.
I mean, I don't have to have sparkly sunglasses, but I do kind of want them now. What were the main changes that you made?
Any transformation starts with respect. Respect the legacy, respect the brand, respect the company. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be here to turn it around.
Because you're the first non-family member to run this company in
Correct.
its history, right?
Correct.
That's got to be kind of scary.
Yes. Well, it has its share of challenges, but also of opportunities.
Okay.
Because when you come and you're not part of the family, you don't carry baggage. Your agenda is clear. You just want to create value. I'm a brand man. I've been a CEO for more than 10 years, but at heart, I'm a brand man.
But not necessarily jewelry. You were at Procter & Gamble.
Exactly.
You were at...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've always been that, and I believe that is fundamental for a brand like Swarovski. I think you can be superbly creative and be super disciplined.
What does the discipline do? What is, like, why can't you just be extremely creative?
I was in a process of turning the company's profitability around, and I could not afford the luxury of having disorder in that sense. But you need to manage it in a way and through a managerial philosophy. And that philosophy is called tight, loose, tight, which is being very tight on the values of the company, of the strategy, and be very tight on results. But in the middle, you have to have the courage to let people meander a little bit.
A little bit of freedom,
a little bit of
agency.
serendipity, a little bit, I tried that, what do you think? I said, yeah, let's try it. It doesn't work, but then I make sure don't do 15, let's try it to see if it works. We limit them and we spread them over time to make sure the risk profile is managed and is reasonable.
When I was growing up, my mom had the Swarovski crystal figures, like doves and swans and very elegant animals. You've got a baby Yoda figure over here.
Yeah.
You've got Shrek, you've got Wicked, you've got Disney. Is this still a big part of the business?
What we try to do with figurines is really showcase and display what we call our savoir-faire, because our ability to design and cut crystal with precision is even more enhanced in the home figurines category.
I mean, am I allowed?
Yeah, you are.
I'm not gonna lie, I do kind of want a baby Yoda.
Yeah, it's called brand desirability. We have a group of collectors that buys what you mentioned, which is, the animals, the still pictures, the flowers. But you also increasingly have a group of franchise aficionados, the lovers, the fans of Star Wars. They'll
Disney,
want everything
Star Wars,
from
Marvel,
Star Wars.
yeah.
And that's a different demographic. They're younger. In general, they're more skewed male.
Do you get dudes in here buying these?
Yes, of course.
Oh, this says Ariana Grande. So this is the new collection?
Exactly. That's the new capsule, the dragonfly of Ariana Grande. The collaborations with ambassadors like Ariana Grande give a lot of texture and dimensions to the cultural capital of the brand. We select people who are in tune with our pop luxury positioning that can nurture it and we can nurture it back. The collection has been very successful.
I mean, this is the second year, so obviously you went back for more.
It renews the storytelling around the brand. And we use some also design codes which are unmistakably Swarovski, but with a little bit touch of originality, so people can be tempted to layer this on top of what they already have with us.
And let's be real, layering means they're purchasing more products.
Exactly.
I also feel like you guys are positioned at an interesting time because study after study is showing the younger generation, even people my age, don't really care about diamonds, precious gems, in a way that previous generations did. I know that we're in a room that you guys now have diamonds here, lab grown, I'm assuming.
Correct.
Are you taking advantage of that? Have you seen that growth in your customer base?
No, you're absolutely right. The train left the station for lab-grown diamonds.
Yeah.
And it's growing rapidly. This is the trend of the market, and we've been playing it unapologetically. We've been one of the first. We're determined to do it because we think it's a triple win. It's a win for the customer. In the end, for your buck, you get a much bigger carrot. The psyche of younger customers is a different one in terms of, and what would the value remaining and who could I sell it for? I'm passing on to my daughter. People are more in the here and now. I love it. It seats me. It gives me joy. Give it to me.
Life is hard, man. I just want some pretty stuff.
Exactly.
When you walk around the store, it's not cheap, but it is achievable. Are you at a price point that you think is very beneficial for this time, given the pullback on luxury spending?
We're one of very few companies that offer products in one store ranging between $150 to $250,000. So with us, most people can find something that they like and that is suitable to them.
And you want customers that range those income brackets.
We want to have a combination of consumers who are young, who are in the zeitgeist, and who determine the zeitgeist. But Gen Z has its limitations, particularly monetary. And that is why our target group is a little bit broader. The post-90s, that is our core target, used to represent 21% of our sales back in 2021. Today, they're 45%. And in the US, 50%.
When did that transition start to happen, and how successful has that rebranding been?
What we call pop luxury is having the credentials of what I call conventional luxury. Heritage, 1895, Austrian Tyrol, Daniel Swarovski, savoir-faire, we call it in French, which is craftsmanship, creativity, and quality. We have it all. But in addition to that, at what makes our luxury pop luxury, we are always in the zeitgeist. We are unapologetically modern. We will never be a dusty brand. We're fun. We don't think to be luxury, you have to be stiff. We don't believe that. You can have fun in luxury. Many people who buy our products are not always people with limited means.
Yeah.
There are many people, many customers, ladies, who just say, you know what? I love that extravagant millennium. Give me the pink one as well. And last thing is what we call the human touch. We don't make people wait in line under the rain. We don't treat customers in a haughty
fake scarcity.
way. We don't do stuff like that. Ultimately, the value for money matters. Walking away from it or ignoring it, just thinking because I'm luxury, it doesn't matter, I think is short-sighted. What should luxury give the consumer at the final end is a feeling of joy and a feeling of self-worth.
All right, so speaking of joy and self-worth, our friends at Swarovski are not immune from Knicks fever.
Oh, interesting.
And they sent us a little gift that we are borrowing. We will be returning.
Of course. What is it?
It is a
I thought it was gonna be a tiara.
Swarovski-filled Knicks pen.
Oh, that's
so
very
when you
nice.
go, they have
Look at
these
that.
pens that you can fill. I don't know which camera
Take
you want
it,
to point it
Lisa.
at.
Here.
I'm here.
I'll give that to Lisa.
Getting all the cameras wrong.
I was hoping for the Knicks tiara,
you
which
can,
didn't
you
come.
can fill it with these dazzling little jewels, and you can do whatever colors you want.
You did that? You filled that up for us?
I did not. They filled it for me.
Okay.
I don't think they trusted me not to spill them
Understood.
everywhere. But I know it's kind of a nice present.
Pop luxury is the phrase that stuck with me from that.
Pop luxury. I think
Explain
it's
that.
very
How do you
interesting.
define that?
So I think they're at an interesting price point given what we've seen across a lot of luxury brands right now. Alexander McQueen announced they're closing a bunch of stores this week. A bunch of other big names that you know are scaling back on retail and having to kind of reevaluate because the prices have just expanded at an unsustainable amount, and the client base is pulling back, both because the money isn't there and because the prices outstrip the value, and a lot of consumers are questioning that. So when you go into a place that's a name you know that's been around for hundreds of years, and you can buy something for $200 or you can buy something for $20,000, I think that's a smart place to be. I also enjoyed him throwing a little bit of shade at some of those places like Hermes and Chanel, saying we're not going to make you wait in the rain.
Wait in the rain, yeah.
No fake scarcity. You don't have to, you know.
You see those lines backing up. Now, since you gave me this
Yes.
nice little pen here that I'm going to keep,
Just to borrow.
I brought something for you guys.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. So I was walking through Penn Station yesterday, Knicks fever. Okay.
Yeah, she
and I
has
saw
it.
these at Zaro's. Instead of black and white cookies, they have Knicks cookies. So I picked
looks-
one up.
plays well on
I got
screen,
one
I
for
must
each of
say.
you guys.
Yes, thank you.
Because the fever is in the air. Tonight is going to be the night. I feel it.
Yes.
We'll see.
A
I don't
special
know.
occasion because Lisa's going to eat a cookie.
A cookie? Yeah, can we watch you documentary evidence of you eating raw sugar this early in the morning?
Noted health and fitness enthusiast, Lisa Mateo is going to eat a cookie on set.
I do want to say, I know
Yes.
I'm like the Eeyore of the sports things over here. So I love that rhyme the guy did about, you know, Knicks and 4, but then he had to change it for Knicks and 5.
Yeah.
So I did want to say to you, my two Knicks fans and my co-hosts,
Oh my gosh.
our set is
Buckle in.
custom, the hours are brutish, my co-host divine, Knicks and 5. There we go. We got our own little version. All right,
We'll
it's
give
fine.
you that.
It was fine.
Christina.
False rhyme, I like that.
It was adjacent. It was rhyme adjacent.
Game 5 tonight.
Yes, but it'll be great. Even if we have to go game 6, it's fine. It comes back to New York. But
You're
the
feeling good.
I'm waiting for the
Do you guys
parade.
want it to come back to New York? I feel like you secretly want them to lose. So they bring it back to New York.
In a way, it'll be phenomenal. The feeling, the emotion to have it happen in here in New York, and then have the parade like, I don't know, what, a day, 2 later?
I want them to win it tonight because I'm going to stay up and really exhaust myself doing it and then do the
don't.
show tomorrow. So to have to do that for naught would be really
It's all
upsetting
right.
to me.
I'll get some sleep for you. You can do Knicks. You can do Knicks.
All right, Randall Williams is going to join us next, along with a bit of history from our friend Justin Fox. That's coming on Bloomberg this weekend as we continue to have Knicks fever here on set.
I'm gonna
in
eat
New
my
York.
cookie.
Do it.
Thanks, Lisa. Yes, dig in. Well, Welcome back to Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm Christina Ruffini. That's David Gura. And as we've been talking about, the New York Knicks are just one game away from their first NBA title in more than 50 years. The team has a storied history in New York, of course, which includes the official name, the New York Knickerbockers. David and Lisa spoke with Bloomberg's Randall Williams and Justin Fox as the city prepares to perhaps add another page. Perhaps. We're couching it. We're not going to jinx it. Perhaps. All right. Take a listen.
Randall, we'll start with you. So the Knicks lead the series 3-1. That last game was a nail biter. Like, I get goosebumps, okay? You were there in the middle of all the action. So explain, like, the feeling, the excitement that was there. How do you describe it?
Now, imagine you just put a mini earthquake in Madison Square Garden. It was easily the most electrifying arena and atmosphere that I've ever been in terms of an NBA game. I mean, the concourse that I was sitting on was literally rocking up and down. And so it was amazing. At one point, I was saying, like, I've been rooting for a good story. And I think the best story is that the series ends in 6 at Madison Square Garden, because there hasn't been a party like if the Knicks won in 6 and the party started at Madison Square Garden. I don't know if that's going to happen anymore.
Talk a bit about, if you would, kind of why the prospect of this championship is having such a big impact on the city itself. There are pro teams here that have won, yes, many more championships than the Knicks have. But why at this moment does it seem like there is such critical mass, so much excitement surrounding this?
Well, I think if you think about the New York sports landscape, baseball and basketball dominate history, even outside of the professional leagues. The culture of it in New York is massive. And basketball really has nothing to show for it from the professional level since 1973. My dad was 5 years old back then, you know what I mean? And so you think about when the last time the Knicks were even on that stage, it was 1999. That's more than a quarter century ago. And so now that they're on this stage and they're facing not just anybody, it's the guy that has been dubbed the future face of the league, a global phenomenon, a global superstar in Victor Wembanyama. And they're bullying him in some aspect. And Victor has played some games on the court as well, some mind games that we saw early in game 4 that looked like they were going to have large ramifications on the game. The Knicks battled back and eventually won that game and is probably going to be one of the all-time great and all-time memorable NBA Finals games ever.
So what would be the one thing that would stand in the way of them winning a championship?
Well, it's very interesting. If you look at all 4 games, the Spurs very easily could be up 3-1 too. In game 2, Victor Wembanyama has a chance to end the game on 2 separate occasions. He throws the ball off his teammate's back, and then he misses the game-winning jump shot. In game 1, it was 90. I want to say it was 94-95 or something around that. And then Jalen Brunson hits a 3, 97-95. The Knicks go on to win it. And then, of course, we have yesterday's game, on game 4, where they're up 29 and they lose that game. So the Spurs are very competitive, and they definitely can string together a winning streak to end this. But they haven't beat the Knicks twice, and they've been beaten on their home court twice. So the 2 of the last 3 remaining games are in San Antonio. That is in their favor, but who knows how many Knicks fans are going to buy tickets and fly all the way there just so they can root their team on.
Justin, let me bring you in here. First of all, you're not a Knicks fan. You are today. We're all Knicks fans.
I mean, I'm definitely rooting for them in this series. I grew up a Warriors fan.
You're a Warriors fan.
So
you've written this column, and the kicker of the piece is an ASAP Rocky line. He's talking to a reporter, and he says, "I'm from New York. I ain't no Knicks fan. I'm a Knick." You've looked into the history of Knickerbocker. It goes back to 1809. Explain how we got here and what this term has connoted through the years.
Yeah, and first of all, he's right. I mean, he's from New York. He's a Knick.
Yes.
And the origin of it is Washington Irving, the guy also behind the legend of Sleepy Hollow and Rip Van Winkle. He was trying to promote, he wrote this book. It was his first big success. It was called The History of New York from the beginning of the world until the end of the Dutch dynasty. And he decided to write it in the voice of this old guy of Dutch descent, whom he gave the name Diederik Knickerbocker. And so the name first appeared in the media with this notice on the bottom of page 3 of the 4-page New York Post. It was called the New York Evening Post then, but it's the same paper, same lineage, founded by Alexander Hamilton and all. And it said, that there was this old guy named Knickerbocker had been staying in a hotel in the city and had gone missing. And this turned out there were then several more, like there was a sighting of him up in the Bronx. And then the owner of the hotel was saying, well, if he doesn't show up, he left this book here, I'm going to publish it to make money off this whole thing. So, and that, book was a big success, really set off Irving's literary career. He'd done some smaller things before then. And then in this just sort of amazing thing, Knickerbocker just became this term in New York City.
How and why? How and why? Why did it stick?
Well, I mean, I guess the idea, it's supposed to represent Dutch New York, but there were no Dutch New Yorkers named Knickerbocker. There was this family upstate north of Albany, and I don't even know how to pronounce the town, Skagdecoke or something.
We will make you, all right.
Or Skagdecoke. And their name was Knickerbocker or Knickerbocker or something. And Irving, he later became friends with Herman Knickerbocker, was a congressman who had been elected right before the book came out. But I think he just chose the name because it had a little Dutchness to it, but it wasn't like one of the names everybody knew. And I think it's just a funny word. It's amusing. And so it was in the 19th century, and there's a whole book about sort of the evolution of the term and how it was used by a historian, Elizabeth Bradley, came out about 16 or 17 years ago. And I read it for the first time last weekend. But it's like, on one hand, it was supposed to refer to old Dutch New York, but pretty quickly people just started using it as all-purpose New York name and then nickname. Like there was a baseball team in the 1850s, the Knickerbocker Baseball Club, one of the first baseball teams. And then in the 1870s, editorial cartoonists started using Father Knickerbocker in his tricorn hat as sort of the Uncle Sam of New York, pushing for good government and consolidation of the city.
Wild.
And all. And so when the Knicks, when they were sitting around the table trying to decide what are we going to call this new professional basketball team, apparently they all, like the 5 or 6 people in the room, all put names in a hat, and the majority of them said Knickerbocker.
How about that?
So I've been a diehard Knick fan, and I did not know this story, and I was just amazed by it. But the thing do you think the Knicks, I mean, you see sports teams kind of change names every once in a while, that happens. Do you think this name, because of the history of it, is it going to stick around, like, for the
they'll always be the Knicks.
haul?
Yeah, I mean,
It's
as long as they're a team, they're going to be the Knicks. I mean, it's just such a great name, especially in the short version works. But if they ever want to go back to being the Knickerbockers,
that's never going to happen.
I guess the other thing is just that Wemby is clearly this new global force, and it's funny, there are actually more people on the Spurs who were born in New York City than, I don't know if there are any on the Knicks, but Karl Anthony Towns is definitely from the metro area, and Jalen Brunson has links going back. But I can just totally see Karl Anthony Towns' father, Knickerbocker, wearing the hat and going around New York, do this. So I'm hoping that's in his future.
Randall, I'll go to you lastly, just on sort of what the championship has meant for New York. I was talking with somebody here who said, look, this is an example of like basketball is the city's game. Again, there have been championships. Yankees have won a lot of championships, but fundamentally, New York's game is basketball. Do you agree with that? So what does this mean kind of culturally for the city to have the Knicks where they're at?
I think that yes, I think that basketball is it right now because of the stars that are on the team. Jalen Brunson is sort of the perfect New York superstar. He's very humble, he's soft-spoken, but when he's on the court, he is a force of nature. And Karl Anthony Towns is also a force of nature. And then they have these role players that might not be top 50 players in the NBA, but they each play their role for their team. And then they have Micah Brown, who utilizes them in a perfect manner. So it really feels like this is a New York team unlike any other. The Yankees spend a lot of money on free agents and building this team, and they've fallen short a lot. I mean, we saw the Yankees-Dodgers series a couple years ago in which they lost, and then I believe the last World Series championship was in 2009. So it's been a while for the Yankees. I'm sure they could electrify the city in a similar tone, but the Knicks haven't won since 1973, and when a city is starved of a championship for that long, it's going to be something unlike we've ever seen before.
We were talking before, and I asked you, who was your favorite team? You had the best response.
My response is that I'm rooting for a good story. And in a best-case scenario, I would like the Knicks to win in 6 at Madison Square Garden on a potential Game 6 for on Tuesday, or a Game 7 in which is anybody's game because of the fact that it's Game 7. Who doesn't love a Game 7? And I think if the party starts in Madison Square Garden on Tuesday, the city is going to be absolutely insane. I don't even think there's going to be anybody in this office on Tuesday or Wednesday if that is the case. So I'm excited, and I think we all should be too.
Welcome back. Bloomberg This Weekend. Time for this weekend's pointed news quiz. Highlight for me, for Christina, for you as well, I hope.
If I win again this week, are you going to accuse me of malfeasance?
Absolutely. The cheating investigation continues. I am quite certain that's what's happening here.
This is horrible.
And I lose quite frequently, so if I'm cheating, I should be better at it.
To add a little layer of plausible deniability.
All right, Lisa,
she does.
Be nice to us. It's been a long week. Okay.
Here we go. You know what? Play along at home. If you don't know how to play, let me explain it to you. Okay,
They're just here for the drama. They're just here for the drama, not the game.
For the drama, I know,
Yeah.
which is great in itself.
Yeah.
30 chips.
An emotional support cookie. All right. Okay.
30 chips in front of each of them, okay? So they're each going to place their bets because we have 3 categories. So depending on how you feel about each category depends on how you're going to place your bets on each one, all right?
Okay, what are the categories?
Let's get to the categories.
Yeah.
First is weather.
Weather.
Okay, how do you feel about that? Next is currency. And finally, shoes.
Shoes. All right. I'm not going to go in on currency, but I will put 2 on weather.
2 on weather.
So most of mine are on. You're going to do your usual 3-way split.
I kind of want to just do the first and the second, but I don't trust myself. I'm gonna have
Always.
you
You're
doing all of them. I'm doing all of them.
Well, usually
you know
pays
what?
off,
It does
so.
work. It does work for her. Let's get to the first
That's
question.
right, it does. What you got, Lisa?
Okay, weather. Here we go. Here's your question.
Yeah.
Scientists, they are warning that a potentially historic climate pattern has emerged in the Pacific. What is the name of this phenomenon? Ooh. A potentially historic climate pattern.
I gotcha.
Ooh, I know. You both did it really fast. I'm surprised. Go.
El Nino.
El Nino.
Both of you. Ding, ding, ding. Okay.
We both feel a little tilted. I was so
that's
proud
how
of
you doubled
myself.
That's why I doubled
You
up.
doubled
that puts
up.
me in the lead with 20 points.
Oh, so you
just for
somehow
our
knew it was
listeners
going to be El
following on
Nino? You
radio.
somehow knew it was going to be El Nino?
There are only 2 weather patterns I know. La Nina would be the other.
Exactly. But
That
it's going to
is
strengthen
the
into
girl
a
in
super El
Spanish.
Nino.
Thank you. That is, I do know that. I do know that much Spanish. Thank you for mansplaining that to me.
Muy
Lisa.
bien,
What else you
David
got?
Gura, muy bien. Let's go on to currency, shall
Currency.
we? Okay. David, you didn't bet anything on
No.
this one. Okay, here we go.
Uh-oh.
Might be a good reason.
Uh-oh.
Indonesia.
Oh, no!
Had Asia's worst performing currency this year due to spending worries. What currency is under
Will you take
pressure?
Will you take a phonetic spelling?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not.
Okay.
It's not the bot. It's the other one.
What is Indonesia's currency?
I don't know if this is how I spell it.
Okay. I've never been there. Have you been?
Yes, but only for like 8 hours on a diplomatic trip.
I'm going to say the ringgit.
Ringgit? No,
It's like
no,
it's
that's
like the
not it.
rupiah.
Rupiah.
Wow.
Yes.
Now we're tied.
And you know what? Yes, you were doing, even though you spelled it wrong, it's fine.
Do I get that? Okay, you still
yes.
get it.
Our radio audience doesn't care.
Here I can barely spell dollar. How is it? How do you spell it?
Rupiah.
I was way off. Okay.
No, you were close. You were close.
And our viewers will find that on the screen as well.
She's keeping. All right, we are tied right now, folks.
Okay, here we go.
Tied at
Here we
20
go.
apiece.
I love a tie.
We go to our third, which is shoes.
Shoes.
Okay, here we
Ties,
go.
actually.
Japanese footwear company Asics is spinning off one of its fastest growing brands. What? I'll give you a hint. What cat is in the name? Okay, so there's a cat in the name.
Do we get bonus points if we say the first
One
part
of
of
its
it?
fastest growing brands.
Yeah. You ready?
Is this like a Brooklyn thing? I don't know.
I did not know this.
Tiger.
Puma?
Tiger is correct. David Gura coming in. Sales have jumped over the past few years, a 34%
making it
increase
rain.
year over year. Those are for me.
I've never heard of these.
Wow. There's a shadow being cast from this tall stack of chips in front
That
of
is
my
a very tall stack of
self.
chips.
We are
David.
literally tied.
No way. What are you talking about? 30.
Oh, no. Shoot. Okay. All right. Well,
that means we have a bonus.
I bought a pair of these shoes in the Singapore airport. They're
Really?
Cool.
Did you?
You know what they are. I don't care. What's the first word? It's like tiger.
no,
It's just tiger.
I've never heard of these shoes. Are they always
hold on.
like yellow
You're
or
gonna make me
orange?
I just wanted Lisa to pronounce the
this.
Japanese name, but we're not going to make her do that.
Onitsuka.
Onitsuka, sure.
Onitsuka tiger.
Tigers. Well, maybe get a pair.
All right.
Who makes them? ASICS makes them.
For now.
Yes, the tiger. Okay.
Wow. Wow.
Lisa.
All right.
Okay, first
With
we had
that-
Elmo, now we have
with
tiger
that-
noises.
with
Okay.
that.
What's
Okay.
the bonus? What's the bonus?
We go on to phones.
Phones?
Ready?
I have one of those. I have two of those.
Okay, you do have two of them. Okay, Apple announced an update to its operating system with hints in the code teasing an unveiling of what new product? What new product
I do know this one.
was being teased? What could Apple possibly come out with? I don't know.
Okay.
Think about it. We have the soothing music for you.
I do love the soothing music, and I feel like I've moved too quickly through this today. I'm going to say a ring.
A ring? No,
Yeah, like an
no.
Oura
I think it's a
ring?
foldable phone.
Foldable
Oh.
phone. So she gets.
So are we tied?
She
I
gets.
guess.
Yes, give me my
All's-
chips back.
all's fair
What do you
in-
get for you
all's
being
fair in the
hubristic
game of
today?
phoning.
All right.
It is not.
This is fabulous.
It is not
Explain this to me.
official. Apple hasn't said it, but
Yeah.
yes, the hints
And our Mark
are there.
Gurman here has reported on this as well. He's like very enthusiastic about it. I failed to see the utility myself, but he was saying you could unfold it would be like an iPad in front of yourself. So it would be, and it wouldn't be the. it
Okay,
wouldn't
look,
be the
as someone
line.
who has
two
two
phones. It'd probably be the
there you
size of
go.
both your phones unfolded.
Like this is a very large one. This is the Bloomberg phone. This is an Android. This is my phone. This is but I don't need it to really be this big. This is.
Well, I don't know. You could watch this show. You could watch Bloomberg this weekend
A lot of
at
people watch
Bloomberg.com
on
or
the
the
phone.
Bloomberg Anywhere app. And if you had a wide, openable phone, think of how great it would be to see that in wider relief.
But it's going to be heavier. It's going to be clunkier.
Will
I
it
would
be?
take
I
it,
don't know.
honestly, I would take it if it just folded into half of this size.
Like a
that I would be
razor,
interested
like a
in. Something,
Motorola razor.
Yeah, something that goes into an evening bag a little better.
I'd be afraid of it breaking. I don't know. I would probably break it.
No, that's fair. Or like if you have kids, I can see kids going rear and like breaking them.
Well, we hope that Tim Cook is taking all of this into account as he thinks about whether or not to debut this phone in the limited time he has left as the CEO of Apple.
I would love it if Tim were watching our show. I would not recommend listening to me on any technology product placement ideas or product development ideas, I guess, is where I'm at.
You can test your knowledge on all 10 questions. If these 6 weren't enough, take the Pointed News quiz at Bloomberg.com/pointed. Christina, as you're so fond of pointing out, multiple choice.
It is easier
On the app.
online, and there are more of them, so you get more chances than we do. It's kind of ride or die here on the weekends. Lisa, great job as always.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us this week. We'll be back tomorrow starting at 7 a.m. I'm David Gura.
I'm Christina Ruffini. Of course, we're here with Lisa Mateo. Stay tuned. Masters in Business is up next for our radio listeners, and on TV, Wall Street Week with David Weston starts right now.